I'll set him off. You'll hear when he comes in, but just
Yeah.
bear with because I need to put this sort of noise filter on afterwards as well.
Okay.
Okay.
If you want to keep
Here we
that
go.
bit in at the start, I can because I was just using it.
Now recording.
There we go.
Jesus Christ, that was
It is very,
official sounding.
very scary, yeah. Okay.
Just wait till we get into the hit or miss section because I've got some fantastic sounds for you, Will.
Oh, we're using new sounds today, are we?
You have a
Yep.
soundboard now.
No,
I
he
had it
has
for
a
the first few
soundboard.
hours.
He has a soundboard. I do not. I find it hilarious though.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Oh,
It
it's fun,
is.
definitely.
Just before we get started, I just want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, we want a nice, clean fight.
Yes.
Please keep all hands and feet inside the car at all times.
Yeah.
From the discussion we were having yesterday, I do definitely feel like I'm going to be the mediator between the two of you, so please don't let things get out of hand.
Oh
Okay.
dear me. Okay.
Welcome to the Hit and Miss podcast. Today we have a new guest. This is episode 2, and we are with Andrew Kemp. Hello, Andrew.
Hi. Hi.
And today we'll be going through the ordinary sections. You've already seen it in episode 1. And first of all, back to basics, because we messed it up in episode 1. We're going to go by on this day, then hit or miss, then the episode review, then the news, which we did in episode 3, which comes out next Sunday. After this episode.
That'll be the Sunday
of
after,
course. Yeah, but I'm saying it in the perspective of the people watching this.
Oh yeah.
Right. So,
Don't break the continuity.
I know.
Honestly.
I gave Mike the reins in episode 1, and he just didn't remember the order we did in episode 3. The day.
Yeah.
before.
Well, in terms of recording out of order, I've actually got my first time hosting without you tomorrow, so we'll see what a mess I make of that.
I know. Well, there's only 2 of you, so
True.
it shouldn't be that much of a mess. Just
No, I've got it all planned out and written down, so hopefully I'll be fine.
brilliant.
But listen,
Well-
just to clarify, your favourite Doctor is Jodie. She's really great, yeah.
Oh yeah, she's my favorite. Right at the top.
I just wanted to get that in there. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, episode 1 hasn't came up yet, so Andrew has no idea what this podcast is going to entail, except from the review, which we'll be going on to later. And just as a clarification, we don't tell the viewers what episode we're going to review until we actually get there. Okay?
Yes.
So section 1 is the on this day section, where I literally just go through what happened on the day that this is going to go up, which is the 25th of October. And I messed this up a couple of days ago, and Mike had a go at me. It's definitely going up on the 25th of October, innit?
I don't know. I've got it written
must be.
somewhere, but
Looking at my calendar, 18th is tomorrow, episode 1. The 25th,
25th,
is next
yeah.
Sunday,
Yeah.
which is the 25th. And
That's
I'm
right.
just going to go through the list, and you just tell me, just give me your thoughts on the episodes and what you think, okay?
Mhm.
Now, the website that I usually used is down. It's crashed this morning, and I can literally use every other website except from that one. So maybe they've just run out of money they haven't renewed the website, but I just can't access it. So I'm using an alternative website today, and unfortunately this one only shows the episodes, not also the birthdays and the deaths. So it's just the episodes, so it's going to be a shorter on this day section today. Without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. Okay, the Pyramids of Mars, Part 1, premiered in 1975.
ooh, interesting.
I think we talked about the Pyramids of Mars last week, actually.
Yeah, that's why I didn't really want to get into it because I think we'll go a little bit more into it on episode whichever
And
one we
Andrew,
record.
have you watched it?
Yeah, I've watched the Pyramids of Mars twice now, I think, actually.
What do you think of it?
I think it's actually really pretty damn good. It was one of the first classic stories I watched because, so one of the reasons I got so heavily into Doctor Who is because my dad's cousin, who we used to be really close with, he loves it. He had like all the classics on DVD, and it was either my birthday or Christmas, he got me a bunch of them one year. And then he sort of recommended which ones to do. So he recommended Genesis, he recommended Terror of the Zygons, and then he recommended Pyramids of Mars.
Right.
And I thoroughly enjoyed all 3. So
Well, that episode was broadcast 45 years ago, if my maths ain't failing me. Incredible.
Jesus Christ, that episode is
Oof.
Wow.
Full Circle Part 1 premiered in 1980. I think we spoke about that one as well.
Yeah.
Which one was that?
Full Circle Part 1.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
No?
Don't think so, no.
If you have no comments, I'll just go straight to the next one. Mind Warp Part 8 in 1986.
Okay.
And In the Forest of the Night, broadcast for the first time on this day in 2014.
Oh, I think you know my opinion on that one.
I
Come on,
adore
say it's a great episode, Andrew. Say it's a great.
I adore the Capaldi era. I love Stephen Moffat as a writer and as a showrunner, but Jesus Christ, that episode is garbage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is
Correct.
I consistently rank it as one of the worst episodes of the modern era of Who. I hate it so much.
Absolutely true. Yep. See, we're on the same page to start off with. That's a good start, at least.
I just can't. It's just not as. It's all over the mess, and I don't like the character of Danny. I used to like him, but my most recent rewatch, I was like, what's the point? And what's the point of this episode? It's nothing. It's just melodramatic at times, and it just adds nothing to the show. It's a poor episode. But
Yeah.
sorry, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say I pretty much agree. I don't think there's any major redeemable qualities in it. It doesn't help that the episode is just completely filled with children, which I don't like. So that makes it a bit more difficult.
Well, that's the end of this section, which is a short one today, unfortunately.
Just to clarify, Will, if you want to make it a little bit longer, I have got a little bit of... I found a thing with some more information. Unfortunately, it still doesn't contain birthdays and death dates or anything.
Okay.
But it does have other bits and pieces on this day, which will be October the 25th, which I was able to find. So in terms of Doctor Who-related stuff, in 1975, Part 1 of the TV comic story The Space Ghost was published. I've never heard of it.
No.
Yeah, 1979 on this day, a couple of things that were on newsstands. Terry Nation's Dalek Special by Target Books, which I have actually heard of. I've heard some good things about it. And the third issue of Doctor Who magazine as well on the same day.
I used to love that magazine. I used to buy it.
Yeah, it's great. And I don't know if you mentioned this, but I didn't hear because I was trying to look this up. In 1989, the first part of Curse of Fenric was broadcast on this day.
Where was it? It missed out on the website I looked at.
There was another big one that you missed as well in terms of, because you definitely didn't say this one. In 2010, I'm definitely on the 25th of October, which is the date we're going out, yeah?
Yeah.
Because I've got all the other ones you mentioned, Mind Warp, Full Circle, Pyramids of Mars.
Well, I'm never using that website again.
In 2010, Part 1 of Death of the Doctor was first broadcast, the Sarah Jane Adventure story on CBBC.
Oh, okay. I love Death of the Doctor. I think it's one of the best Sarah Jane Adventure stories. And I think you also mentioned Curse of Fenric, didn't you?
Yes, Part 1 of Curse of Fenric aired on this day. Yeah.
That is one of my all-time favourite classics.
Yep, same. I love that episode.
I love the Curse of Fenric. I remember when I first met Sophie Aldred back in my first convention in, I think, 2014. That was about a week after I'd first watched that story. So when I was talking to her, she asked me, like, just general Doctor Who questions. And when she was like, "Oh, how much of the 7th Doctor era have you seen?" And the 7th is Phil's favourite Doctor, so I've seen quite a lot of it up to that point. And I was like, "Oh, I've seen a fair amount of it, but Curse of Fenric is definitely my favourite." And she was like, "Oh yeah, that's also my favourite. I loved filming that." So yeah,
cool.
That was really good.
Yeah, so obviously, I mentioned, didn't I, that Part 1 of Death of the Doctor as well. So obviously, along with that, Episode 3 of Sarah Jane's Alien Files premiered. The story The Seeds of Doom, which we've mentioned a couple of times, was released on Region 2 DVD. Just let me have a quick look through. And the first episode of Classmates was released on YouTube. I presume that was a companion series for Class, although I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've ever really heard of that.
Let me double check actually, because there's a clickable link here. Yes, it is. It was basically the equivalent of Doctor Who Confidential, but for Class.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at YouTube now, and it's basically just interviews with the cast, I believe. Or it's just like a recap of the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and finally, the vinyl version of The Abominable Snowmen was first released, which I only mentioned because obviously that's still a lost story, so it's pretty much the only way to experience it unless you watch the recaps or the telesnaps.
What website did you use to get that?
I have absolutely no idea. I just typed in Doctor Who
That's
October
helpful.
25th and then clicked on what
Wow.
came up.
I just used sky.doctorwhonews.net, .net, and that didn't work today. So I
Okay.
used the next best one, and it missed half of it. So that's...
Bear with and I'll tell you which one I did use because it'll presumably be in my history here somewhere. So, where are we? Yeah, so it's the just the random TARDIS wiki.
Oh, right,
So-
okay.
It's the top result when I typed in Doctor Who and today's date. So yeah, it's just the actual Doctor Who wiki.
Guys, if
Since-
Mike
since
got
it
any of
was
this wrong,
mentioned-
blame him.
I was just going to ask, since it was mentioned, I'm kind of curious to hear your opinions. What did you two think of Class?
We talked
We've
about this in
mentioned it a
episode
few
1. We really
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
I liked it as well. I see why people maybe weren't that big a fan of it, but personally, I really, really enjoyed it, and I wish they had have gotten a second season.
Oh, yeah, I agree. What's your favourite episode from the series 1?
Probably Night Visiting. I really liked that
Oh.
one.
That
That's
was
interesting.
one,
I think
not one
all
we
three
mentioned.
of
Yeah.
us, all three of us have a different favourite episode then.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
what's your twos?
Oh, mine was the metaphysical
right.
engine, or what Quill did was, but I've
That
mentioned
one
that
is
in a different.
also phenomenal.
Yeah.
And my favourite is Detained, which I like.
Is that the one that's sort of like the counterpart to the metaphysical?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Okay. The one where they're all in
basically
that
the-
room
I
and
think
there's
it's
a
the one
meteor.
where they're stuck in a classroom and then it morphs into like a different realm, and then
Yeah, it is.
at
It
the
is.
end
If I remember.
he zooms out from the box and it goes into alien planet. And I always thought
Yeah.
that scene was poor CGI, but I have a weird feeling for it. It's just like a soft spot. I like that.
You
episode.
basically just listed the best 3 episodes, then I think. In my
Oh, I don't know.
opinion.
I definitely always stick up for. I think Co-Owner of a Lonely Heart is great as well, and obviously, the pilot for Tonight We Might Die is great. So actually,
Yeah.
I don't think there's not many of the episodes I don't like, other than I'm not a huge fan of Coach with the Dragon Tattoo.
I was about to mention. I think that's probably the weakest.
That's the
of
weakest,
the 8.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I didn't realise there were so many episodes because I've only watched it once and I only remembered about 5 episodes. But then when you started rattling them off earlier, I thought, where are these all coming from? I had no idea.
I was the opposite. For some reason, I just assumed there was like 10 to 12 episodes, and I think there's only 8 because I
There is.
literally.
There's only 8.
I thought there was only 5. But that must
No,
have
no,
been
there's
something else.
definitely-
That
There's
must have been Children of Earth I was thinking of.
There's For Tonight We Might Die, Coach with the Dragon Tattoo, Night Visiting. Then there's the 2-parter in the middle, which is, I can't remember both parts, but I know one's called Co-Owner of a Lonely Heart. And then it's Detained, What Quill Did, and then it's The Lost. So there's 8 in total, I believe.
Right.
Awesome. Well,
There we
because
go.
we
I'm gonna have
decided
to
we were
watch
gonna mention it and review a chosen episode that we haven't decided yet. I did actually buy the DVD set for myself this week because it was like £4 on eBay, and I like that series. And it's been taken off Netflix, which I did. I said it was on there last time. So when you hear me say that in a future podcast recording, I'm lying. Okay.
Well, I'm just trying to look up the polls to see which one came out on top. Because I think that in each poll there's one that's way out. So
Oh, I can tell you what they are because I've been looking at it regularly.
I've got them up now if you want me to dash through them. So the Sarah Jane Adventures, Death of the Doctor is winning. Then Torchwood, Everything Changes is winning. And then in Class, for Tonight We Might Die is winning. So it's for Torchwood and Class, it's the first ever episode.
Yep.
Which we should have expected, to be honest.
Yeah. To be fair, we
Okay.
didn't include in the Sarah Jane choices Invasion of the Bane.
I was just
But I don't think it
mention-
would have come. Don't think it would have come close to the 2 episodes that actually featured the Doctor. So
Perhaps. I think it would have got more than like the Vault of Secrets, which is on 0%, and then the Empty Planet, which is on 4.8%.
yeah.
I was really excited because I thought I wanted to review the Vault of Secrets, but we're not going to be doing that.
Well,
by the looks of it.
we may decide for a series 2, and then we can go ahead and do it. There's lots of episodes, so there's always plenty of content.
Is the Vault of Secrets the one where the Androvax comes back? I'm trying to remember.
I think so.
I think so.
It's the Men in Black one.
Yeah. That's the one where the veil alien comes back and because I want to say it possesses Rani's mum, Gita, I think. Anyway, I'm
Right.
trailing off. Sorry.
I can barely remember it. Sorry, I wish I could contribute, but
We just have to go through them all just to see what we think.
course. Yeah.
Well, guys, I think we should wrap that up and now go into the hit or miss section.
Yes, please.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I just go through a list of 10 things that some people like, some people don't, and you guys tell me whether it's a hit, which is favourable, or a miss, unfavourable.
Okay.
Okay? The first one, Dreamland.
Ooh.
Haven't you seen this?
I have. Do you want my opinion via sound clip?
I
Is
do.
this the animated one
This is the David Tennant animated thing,
with
yeah.
with Martha?
I think so,
I
yes.
think it is. I remember watching it once.
No, I don't think Martha's in that one. Isn't that the Infinite Quest that she's in? But Dreamland's the Doctor kind of solo.
I'm just looking at it now, and it is the Doctor Solo. I think the
Yeah.
Infinity Quest is with Martha.
Dreamland was the first appearance of the Men in Black that later appeared in Sarah Jane Adventures, and I'm sure
Oh,
Georgia
of course,
Moffat
yeah,
is one of the
yeah.
voices. Yeah.
Yep, I just blanked. Yep, okay, I remember now.
And the Infinity Quest has Martha Jones and some spider human looking thing.
Yeah.
I'm just googling it now.
So yeah. So if you remember Dreamland now, what are your thoughts then, guys?
Don't you want to give your sound clip?
Oh, sorry. Okay, bear with. My thoughts on this.
I am on the fence,
Really?
but I'll go hit.
Oh wow. Did you record that and just put a filter over?
I may have found a Dalek voice changer.
Oh no. Wow, this podcast just got even better. You know, I remember it being broadcast on CBBC on like repeats, and when this came out, I was young and I was an avid viewer of CBBC, and because I was just getting into the show, I found this really interesting, and then I watched it, and I loved it. I don't think it would be that good on rewatch now, but because of nostalgia purposes, I really like it.
I would say it's completely inoffensive. I don't think it's got anything in it where you're like, that was a terrible decision or that's really bad. But at the same time, it's got nothing super memorable either. As I said, I think the most sort of thrilling part to come out of it was the fact that the aliens then came out on to feature in Sarah Jane, so it kind of made the thing canon. But otherwise, it's not that notable.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you just said there.
I do remember the first scene where the spaceship crashes and then the Doctor emerges. And that's similar to like the Doctor Falls, but that came 10 years after. But the Dreamlands,
Yeah.
so we've got two hits. Andrew, what were you saying? Hit or miss?
I'll go again. Nothing inoffensive. I don't remember it particularly well, but clearly it can't have been that bad if I'm not like going on about how dreadful it was. So I'll give it like a soft hit.
A soft hit. Okay, that's 3 hits for Dreamland. Now the next 2 we mentioned in the last episode we recorded, and I said, don't talk about it. We're going to mention this in the next hit or miss section.
Okay.
Fugitive of the Jadoon.
Okay,
This
Don't
could
Andrew,
be
do you
better
want
for in itself. I know you're going to say hit, and I'm going to say miss, hard miss, and then
to... Well,
go for it.
Andrew?
I think it's an absolute hit. I really, really, really like that episode. I remember when it first aired. I'm not like in love with the Chibnall era as of yet, but I also don't hate it. I sort of take it as it comes at the moment because it sort of seems to depend episode by episode whether I like it or not. But I remember sitting down to watch Fugitive. I thought it was just going to be a normal run-of-the-mill story and like, oh, the Jadoon are back, that's cool. And then it just became so much more, and I was along for the ride, absolutely loved it. Definitely the strongest episode of the year, in my opinion, so it's an absolute hit for me.
Okay. Well, I'll give my clip and then some further thoughts, but in terms of my opinion on this...
It's a miss for me, Will.
Yeah, sorry, it's a miss for me. I
I'm
I
very
don't-
surprised by that.
I think that my issue with the episode is that I got really annoyed at everybody who was blinded by the fact that it just has a big revelation in it, because otherwise it's got no story. at all.
Thank you.
Other than the
Yes.
big revelation, there's nothing there. It's just a series of things that happen and don't go anywhere. They either set up something else further down the line, or they're just abandoned completely. And yeah, the overall story just isn't that interesting. If you basically boil it down, you can explain it in like 2 sentences. It's basically there's a Jadoon crime force after the Doctor, and there are pre-Hartnell Doctors. Oh, and Captain Jack's around, but don't worry about that because we're not going to do anything with him.
Okay, so, well, I said I loved the episode, and it is a hit for me. I didn't say I thought it was perfect. I will definitely agree the Jack thing did kind of just come out of nowhere, and as nice as it was to see him, I did very much get the impression that this was Chibnall sort of going, oh look, we've got plans, and I was like, okay, well, can you do something with them, please?
Yeah.
For me, it was just like it was a Series 11 episode with a lot of fan enjoyment elements added into it. If you slide that into Series 11 without Jack and just put it into Series 11, it would fit right into the mediocre section. And because it's in Series 12, which is rated slightly higher, just because, in my opinion, because of all the fan wank kind of stuff. It's the Jack. You've got the new Doctor. What else do you have? You've got the Jadoon. You've got the Master. And I think if you took out these surprises away, and if they were spoiled before, would it be rated so highly? And for that reason, if you wanted a good Jadoon story, go to Series 3, Smith and Jones. That's a great Jadoon story, even though they're not utilised amazingly. They're utilised better than in The Fugitive of the Jadoon. And Series 3, in my opinion, is just a complete... Series 12 is a complete rip-off of Series 3. I think I got that mixed up initially. But if you were to watch Series 3 and then you were to watch Series 12, the parallels are clear, and it's just a copy. And I think
I don't agree with that.
No.
No.
Well, you've got the Jadoon, you've got the Master, you've got the pocket watch giving regeneration energy. The two of those things are in Fugitive of the Jadoon. You've got Captain Jack's return, Series 3 and Series 12. They're all
Yeah,
that's
but
just
structurally speaking, I would say it's a lot more similar to some of the Capaldi era ones in terms of like the Master being in the premiere and the finale. It's very reminiscent of Series 9 and 10. And it's the Capaldi era was the other one that had 2-part finales that had the Master and the Cybermen in. So I personally think it's more reminiscent of the Capaldi era than anything in the RTD era.
fair enough.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you, because I sort of realised it was kind of an amalgamation of all sorts of different things that happened in New Who. So like we said, we got a new Master appearing, and obviously we got the revelation of that. We got the whole Fob Watch Energy Chameleon Arch sort of thing with the Ruth Doctor. We had the Jadoon. We had the Master and the Cybermen double-hander. A lot of the stuff that there was other ones as well. I'm trying to remember what, but there was a lot of stuff that it seemed to almost borrow from other series of the show, not just Series 3, but a few different ones.
I think that's gonna happen in any show, though, isn't it? But especially
True,
that's like
but-
50 odd
but-
years old. You know?
True, but the fact that you've got like the specific revelation of a new Doctor we didn't even know about, that's just straight out of Series 7.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was trying to think if there was anything else, but I think that's it.
Well, I did have other thoughts on Fugitive of the Jadoon because I think I'm in the opposite camp in terms of why I dislike it to you, Will.
Go for it,
Because
Will.
I would say if you just had it as a nice kind of pleasant Jadoon story and cut out Jack and Ruth, I think that would be good. It wouldn't be like, oh, this is one of my top 10 out of 10 episodes, but it would be on a par with, say, the Jadoon eps of Sarah Jane Adventures. Just, nice, pleasant, enjoyable enough, nothing bad about it. And I do love the Captain Jack scenes because they're really well acted, and I think John Barrowman's great, and all the interactions fantastic. But the scene is just, because it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't pay off within that season, it just really jars because it doesn't have any purpose in the episode.
I think it was very jarring in the episode itself because one moment you've got the Jadoon on contemporary Earth, and then you've got these mad scenes with Jack going around the TARDIS console with Graham. And I think this is going nowhere, and it's also taken away from the Jodie section of the episode, the Jodie and the companions, and I thought, this is just a waste, and it was a waste of Jack, and if he doesn't return next series or in this special, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the fugitive Doctor, it's not a popular opinion, but I don't like her. Not because I have any huge issue with the idea of, although we'll get into that later, pre-Hartnell Doctors or whatever. But I just think in Fugitive of the Jadoon, that character doesn't act like the Doctor. And everybody fawning over her like, oh, she should have been the Doctor instead of Jodie, she's much better. She's absolutely not. She's super violent. She rips a Jadoon's horn off. And we're all supposed to be like, oh, she's the great hero of the series who, as soon as she gets her identity, it turns out she's essentially a sort of space FBI agent who isn't afraid to get a little bit physical and do violence. And that's not the Doctor at all, Plus, it has the most egregious continuity error in Doctor Who, which bugs me to this moment, and which they still haven't explained, and which I'm worried they're not gonna. And I think, yeah. So, any guesses on what that is? I'm guessing you all know what I'm talking about.
There we go, you're back. Sorry, my audio completely cut out, so I couldn't hear anything.
Sorry about that.
Andrew just messaged me, Kyle. Do you want to repeat that for his sake, or?
Yeah, well, essentially, I won't repeat it all because the podcast listeners will hear it. But in summary, I didn't like the specific incarnation of the Ruth Doctor because in that episode, she doesn't act like the Doctor. She's a bit too violent and gung-ho, and the whole idea of working for, the space division and everything, I don't really like.
Okay, fair enough. I can understand that.
But I also said, and I'll ask you the question as well, and also this episode bugs the ever-living crap out of me because it has the most egregious continuity error in Doctor Who, and I'll see if you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm guessing you do.
Oh, man. Continuity. Oh.
It was all over kind of the internet, and it bugs me to no end that it still hasn't been explained, and I get why it's there, but I'll see if you know what I mean. Andrew?
Is it, because I saw a thing about, is it to do with the, Ruth not knowing what the sonic screwdriver is or something?
No, that makes sense. I'm fine with that.
Was it the TARDIS?
It was. The TARDIS...
Oh, yeah, of course, because if it's a pre-Hartnell Doctor, then why on earth would the TARDIS be a police box?
Yeah, I mean, I get the idea that in the episode itself, Chibnall wanted to go for the visual of, brush off the dirt and it's the familiar police public call box blue thing. It makes absolutely no sense. If the first time they did that was, 1963, when the first Doctor and Susan kind of arrived.
We reviewed that episode, Unearthly Child, and you mentioned it, how that was the first time, according to the dialogue, that the TARDIS got stuck as a police box, because before... It was always different. And it was only a police box in London, modern day, back in the day, 63.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he specifies that it's the first time the chameleon circuit hasn't worked, which, I mean, admittedly, he doesn't have the memories or whatever, but it's way too convenient to assume that the Ruth Doctor previously had an adventure somewhere in, the 50s or 60s or where there was a police boxes were a thing, just happened to disguise her TARDIS as that, yet ended up in the 20th, 21st century, had the chameleon circuit not work or just didn't activate it. I mean, it's way more exciting of a visual to see the familiar TARDIS, but really it should have just been the sort of steel cylinder thing that we saw in Name of the Doctor. It shouldn't have looked like a police box.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, knowing or having an idea of what Chibnall's writing style has been like as a showrunner, he's either just going to completely brush over that, or his explanation is going to be exactly what you just said.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, guys, let's wrap that bit up. With your rating, what would you rate Fugitive of the Jadoon out of 10?
We've ended up reviewing that episode when we didn't intend it.
Yeah, I know, that could be the episode review, to be honest. We spent about a quarter of an hour on that.
Exactly, yeah.
Come on, let's get a rating then. Hour 10.
Go on, Andrew, I'll let you go first.
And just to clarify, guys, this isn't the episode review. This is the hit or miss section. Don't worry. We're going to go on to the actual episode later. Andrew, go for it, sorry.
I always go between an 8.5 or a 9. I genuinely really, really love this episode, and I do think it's the strongest of the era. But I do see its flaws. I can get behind why people would dislike it.
Okay. Mike?
And I'd give it a 4 out of 10. That's always been what I'd said. So at the time and everything.
Well, I didn't expect that. I thought you were going to side with Andrew there. Andrew was going to side with Mike, but okay. I was expecting you to give that a 9 or something.
No, I'm a complete enigma. Just wait until you. Now that you've heard that, you may think I have a very different opinion of the episode that we do review later.
Yeah,
But
I was just
we'll
thinking, I
get to
thought, oh, it's going to give that episode like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, and you may still do, but that's giving me a bit of doubt now. I think you're going to give like a 6 or a 7. That's my prediction anyway. Maybe maybe a 7. I'll say 7. Watch him give it a 10 now that I said that.
Frantically typing, changing stuff.
Next one. If I got that right, you guys have to like this video. Watching, like this video now. If anyone's actually listened, this could flop. This could get like 10 views. Who cares?
Oh, it better not.
It better not. No, I don't think it will. I reckon it will get. How many views do you guys think the podcast is actually going to get? Just
Don't put that pressure on me, dude.
I don't like to say because it's either going to sound like really
Think it
ridiculous,
is.
and I'll
Yeah.
give a high number, and everyone will be like, "There was like 4 people," or you know. But I'll appreciate every single listen and every bit of interaction.
yeah.
But I'm going to plug the ever-loving poop out of it and send it to all my social medias and tell every Who fan to listen.
Yeah.
And I think if we point out the episodes that we're reviewing and let people know and direct them to it, I think this one in particular might get a lot of views. So,
I was thinking about this yesterday. I just finished the rewatch to review it, and I was sat there about 5 minutes later, and I was like, why of all the episodes to ask me to be on, did they pick the one where they're going to be reviewing the most controversial?
that's right, ladies and gentlemen, we're reviewing Dimensions in Time.
But the thing is, when we were actually talking about formulating this podcast after I announced it and just talking about what we were going to do, we actually decided to pick controversial episodes or like middling episodes where some people may say it's good, some may say it's bad, which is why we're doing this today and which is why we've done other episodes. But episode 3, actually, we got an episode and everyone had the same opinion on it. That's spoilery, but there we go. Everyone just... We came up with very similar ratings, but I won't spoil it.
I think that there was enough differentiation in what we liked and didn't like that it's not boring, though. If I may
100%.
say so myself, I think there's enough difference in why we liked things, and
Yeah.
even within sort of the same opinion overall, I think there were things some of us liked that some didn't, and vice versa.
But the thing is, in episode 1, you guys gave the episodes a super low rating. Well, not super low, but a low rating, and I gave it a high rating. So there is conflicting views in the episodes, so don't worry.
Again, we clarified at the time, though, that it depends how you, which we can say because episode 1 will be out. Again, just to clarify, it depends how you classify it. If you're classifying the episode an unearthly child, we all thought it was like a, not perfect. But if you're talking the whole thing as, 100,000 BC, whatever you want to call it, the 4-part serial, 3 out of 4 parts are not good. So...
Yeah, Andrew, you haven't seen episode 1 yet because it's not out. But what would you rate an unearthly child out of 10?
Again, I'm kind of basically thinking the same sort of thing as you guys. Like, most of the parts are just kind of there and kind of dull and not much happens, but the actual unearth the child part itself is really quite good. So
Yeah.
7.
that is not going to work, Will. I'm not susceptible to, you're not a silence. I'm not susceptible to post-hypnotic suggestion.
Who?
I'll give it like a middle ground sort of 5, I guess.
See, that's what we did.
Oh, maybe I'm just out of touch. There we go.
No, listen, as I said at the time, and I think it's worth reiterating, in the world of missing episodes where everybody clamours to want to see every little thing, it's not a great sign that you can go from departing in the TARDIS at the end of the episode An Unearthly Child straight to the Daleks and lose absolutely nothing at all.
Yeah. Maybe it's just the nostalgia that gave me such a high rating. Because I just love that episode. Well, I don't love it because I love the first episode of it. But then the 3 other parts, they're not awful. Because you guys kind of like implied in the review that they were poor, and I thought I can get where you're coming from, but it's not bad. Overall, it's not bad.
Agree to disagree, but yeah, I just wanted to say as well, to clarify, I was making a joke earlier, we're not reviewing Dimensions in Time this episode, but stay tuned.
Oh yeah, teasing future episodes there. No, I'm not going to be in that one. Rest in peace. Well,
You're not gonna die, Will. Let's not put that energy into the universe, because I'm not taking over this entire 11 episodes without you now.
Well, yeah, we'll clarify that at the end because we didn't talk about that in episode 3, which will
But
be the final.
we'll clarify that you're not dying.
Yes,
At
we'll
the
clarify.
end.
Well, we started that rambling at 20 minutes into the recording, and we're now at 40 minutes, and that was just
Oh,
one
wow.
little section of Hit or Miss. And this is
You
another
should really rush
controversial
through.
one. Torchwood Miracle Day.
Oh, do you want to go, Andrew?
Andrew. please.
I'm very middle of the road with Miracle Day.
I'm not.
The thing,
Don't let him peer
if-
pressure you. Don't let him peer pressure you.
if I'm comparing it to other seasons of Torchwood, specifically like season 2 and especially Children of Earth, I'd probably give it a miss.
Okay. Well, my opinion on this. Play.
It's a miss for me, Will.
It's an absolute miss. It's one of the worst pieces of any Doctor Who content I have ever seen. I hate it with genuine passion, to the point that I literally have the other 3 series of Torchwood on DVD and Blu-ray in the case of Children on Earth. I just didn't bother with Miracle Day because it's terrible. Sorry.
In the style of Jeremy Clarkson. Oh no. Anyway. But I would give it a hit. I won't elaborate. I'll just give it a hit and leave it at that.
Okay, well, we may end up reviewing it at some point. So.
Exactly. Next one, The Big Bang.
Okay.
What are you doing? You know. Okay, hang on.
Yeah, we know, but
It's a miss for me, Will.
Yeah, do not like it.
man, how? No.
It's fine. You've
Oh.
got me to back you
What
up
would you
on
rate
this
out of
one,
10?
Will.
Oh, no.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, do you want to go first before?
Oh,
I
you
go
better give me a chance to reply then.
into it?
Oh,
Andrew,
absolute
what do you
hit. I think
Hit or
it's
Miss
phenomenal.
for The Big Bang.
It's really, really,
It's great.
really freaking good in my opinion.
It's not.
Yeah, if you watch the whole if you watch the whole 2-parter, the Pandorica opens, The Big Bang, back to back. It's
That makes it
so
worse.
action paced. It's so brilliant. The music is spectacular. The acting is great for the most part. It's definitely the most consistent acting in series 5, in my opinion, because it's very hit or miss over the course of the series. But even the Pandorica opens and The Big Bang especially, there's not one bad.
I'd
performance
also
in my
argue
opinion.
it's one of the
And
most
you've got no
tightly
gold-
plotted finales, just because of how interwoven it was into like the entire season. I think it's all
Yes.
very, very
Yeah.
meticulously planned out. To the point, I know it probably gets
Strong
spoiled quite a lot, but I think it kind of proves its point with the whole scene with the jacket in Flesh and Stone. The fact that so many people thought that was just a missight, and then oh no, it was actually planned. It was all part of the plot. Like, oh,
Stephen
he
Moffat.
really is. Mike, seriously, to give you an idea of how much I love this episode, I have one tattoo. That tattoo is the quote, "We are all stories in the end, just make it a good
Oh,
one."
I love
with a bow
that. I
tie."
love. I'm not saying there's nothing. I'm not saying the episode's irredeemable with nothing to like, and that speech in particular, and Matt Smith's performance, especially in that scene.
That was in the Pandorica opens, not The Big Bang.
No,
It's
it
true,
is in the Big Bang.
I'm wrong.
It's when he's
Sorry.
comforting little Amy in the bed.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That just sounds really wrong. Let's move on.
So anyway, just to give me the right to reply for a second, if you
for
don't
it.
mind.
Yeah, no worries.
At the time and every time since, it feels to me like part 1 is setting up a completely different episode to what you get in part 2.
100%.
Part
But that's
1
not a bad thing.
ends. No, it's a terrible thing. Part 1 ends promising so much because it's given you, Easter egg references to not just every sort of alien and monster in New Who, but, things as far back as, I think, the Dravins and some random aliens, going back to First and Second Doctor's era. And then there's a massive army of all of these kind of costumes and effects and, Daleks, Cybermen, Sontarans, I could go on all day naming them, all facing down against the Doctor. At the end of part 1, leading you to think, oh, there's going to be some epic battle. The Doctor's trapped, and yet there's this army of evil to face the universe. And then part 2 begins, and there's one Dalek that's turned to stone.
Yeah, but a study, it literally exterminates the Doctor. All those things couldn't kill him, and then the Dalek actually does. You got River, badass, she's got a gun, she kills it, it died. That line, epic.
It's
And then-
not the episode we were promised, and I hate that it's, like, I'm not disputing, like, I don't think Moffat's a genius, and I think Season 5 is a perfect example of Moffat writing things that he thinks are going to be really cool in that pretentious way, and then writing around trying to fit that into a narrative. And it's not necessarily in that episode or in Series 5 itself, but the perfect example of that is the scene with the Doctor going back to visit young Amy at the end of Amy and Rory's tenure, which makes no sense in context. Like, I get that's kind of, it fills in the gap in the 11th hour, but it doesn't, because Amy specifies quite clearly that you never went back. So you can't have your cake and eat it, and you can't do this whole time paradoxy thing. And Moffat uses it in the worst possible way to get out of scrapes by just saying, oh, well, I'm free because I will be, and then that'll happen. And it's nonsensical. It's the worst use of time travel. I detest it.
If I may just offer an opinion, going off of what you were saying about how it built up to something that then didn't happen. I don't know what Will's thoughts are on this. I love the fact that it's a more sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of downplayed finale, because with Russell T Davies, as much as his era is pretty brilliant for the most part, all of his finales were very overblown, huge battles, like, oh, the Daleks, they're invading the space station, and then the Daleks and the Cybermen are invading Earth. There's nothing wrong with it, but it was really nice to have a difference for once, and I feel like the fact that that two-part story in itself is probably my most rewatched story. It's a long one, because obviously the Big Bang's nearly an hour long, and Pandorica's nearly 50 minutes, so it's not a short one. But the fact that I can rewatch that so many times, even though, to be honest, in the Big Bang there's not a lot of action, I think speaks volumes.
No, but that's the point. It's timey-wimey, which Moffat excels at.
But it's not, though. It's timey-wimey in the way that makes no sense. Like, Moffat can be clever with this.
It's a complicated. It's not. Well, it's not complicated because you can understand it, so it's not complicated.
Yeah, but you can understand it because he just basically breaks his own rules and says, "Yeah, but time travel, so it's fine." I hate that. It doesn't work that way. And he does other stories throughout his tenure, and even, ridiculous things like Curse of Fatal Death, which uses time travel in that way really cleverly and really genius. But you don't write yourself into a corner by going, you're in this most inescapable prison, you're not getting out, it's not going to happen. Oh, how am I going to write out of this one? Oh, you're just out because you are, and then that's how you get out because you're already out, because that's time travel. No, it's not. That's nonsense.
If I may just offer, again, just one more little bit just to add to that point of the whole paradox of the Doctor essentially letting himself out, because I know for a fact my partner also agrees with you on that point. He hates that whole he gets out by letting himself out. The thing that I always take away from that is that the reason that paradox is allowed to happen is because at the end of the day, the universe now doesn't exist. It's like, it's just one little pocket now where, because obviously the Earth is the epicenter. So there's not really anything to destroy by there being a paradox because the universe is gone already.
Which is fine, but then you're basically creating that rule which doesn't exist. Again, you've written yourself into a corner and thought you've also cleverly written yourself out of it, but it doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny, which I know is ludicrous if you're talking about something like time travel that doesn't exist. But
I was going to say, we are talking about like thousands of year-old aliens who regenerate.
Yeah, absolutely, but
it's meant to be a bit of fun.
It's weird how literally it's the only time that I can think of where it breaks the sort of established rules of time travel that the show itself goes to pains to set up.
Right. Let me put it to you this way: if this was in Series 11, where would it rank? Would it be near the top? Would it be near the bottom?
It would still be terrible.
So it would be near the bottom.
It would probably be worse if it was in Series 11 because the few things that are going for it wouldn't be in there. Like, I think Matt Smith's performance across both parts is what basically makes the episode watchable. It's what stops it from veering into sort of Fear Her, Forest of the Night territory where I just couldn't even rewatch it. Matt Smith is brilliant, and I think Arthur Darvill has some fantastic moments. Karen Gillan is always great. You know, there's a reason she's basically gone on to be a movie star. And if it was in Series 11, you wouldn't have that. And, you know, respect where it's due, but, you know, Bradley Walsh isn't going to give you that level of gravitas. So...
Alright then, what would you guys rate The Big Bang?
Sure, he'll get the chasers on you. Don't say that. They'll hunt you down.
Well, we've spent 10 minutes on the bad section again.
Sorry.
Just to wrap it up, what would you rate The Big Bang? Not the Pandora Opens, The Big Bang out of 10.
Me or Andrew?
Both of you, let's go for Andrew first.
I would honestly give both parts an absolute 10. It's my all-time favourite story for a reason. I think it's phenomenal in pretty much every way, and I'm not going to apologise for that.
No,
Mr.
no, you
Wilson?
shouldn't have to either. Just The Big Bang, I'll go 3 out of 10. I've turns out Will was right and I killed him.
Spoiler alert for the end of the podcast. Will's dead, everyone.
My hot take literally murdered him. Oh no.
He died. He died of moffatitis. He's gone now.
It's fine, he'll come back and save his own life.
I'm in trouble. If I speak, I'm in trouble. I'd give it a 9. I'd give it a 9.
Just to clarify though, I don't judge anybody who loves the episode, because if they didn't go in with the same expectations I did, that's going to automatically sort of put you on a better footing. And I truly understand there's lots to love. There are scenes in there that I love, but I don't think the story overall holds up. But I will shout out to, like, the river and the Dalek scene is fantastic. Like I said, anything with Matt Smith. I actually really love the ridiculousness of the Fez scenes. Like, that's...
The comedy in that part, in that whole section's really good.
That was
I mean, if the episode exists for...
the next bullet point in this section. Fezzes.
Okay. We already did that.
No, we talked
We did
about
that.
bow ties.
No, oh, okay, my bad.
That was bow ties. Bow ties are cool, we said. And now it's fezzes, and fezzes are cool, and it's a big hit for me.
Okay, Andrew?
I don't have any strong opinion either way, to be honest. I don't think they're a particularly fashionable accessory. Having said that,
in context, we're not talking... We're not asking you to go buy one and wear it down the club.
I know. I'm going to go with a quote from River Song and just say, what on the name of sanity have you got on your head? That's my thought of fezzes.
Okay, well, my thoughts are a bit more upbeat.
Definitely a hit.
I love this.
How good am I at impersonating a Dalek, by the way?
Definitely the software talking there.
Nicholas Briggs, watch out.
Oh, yeah, you know it. I'm doing Big Finish now.
So we got 2 hits, 1 miss then, I guess. Andrew, was that a miss from you, or...?
Yeah, sure, I'll go for a miss, why not?
I think that's all we need to say about that, really, isn't it? Before we take up even more time.
Okay, the 5th Doctor.
Oh, sorry, my phone keeps going off. I should really mute it.
I heard that earlier. I thought I genuinely heard that earlier in the podcast. I thought Kim Possible was calling.
No, it's the Power Rangers communicator bleep. It's far worse. I love how I'm the oldest person on here, yet my ringtone is from Power Rangers. Anyway, go ahead, Andrew. Your thoughts on? I've forgotten what it was. The Fifth
Doctor. I haven't seen enough of him to have a strong opinion, but what I have seen, I'm very net on. But I think every Doctor has a quality that is likable and that they bring that's different. So I'm going to give him a very soft hit, I think.
I will say... I hope this works.
Definitely a hit.
Oh, bless my attempts to be funny. But yeah, actually, I love the character of the Fifth Doctor, but I don't like many of his stories. But the acting and the character I love, absolutely.
The thing
that's fair enough.
Yeah, in the next episode, in episode 3, I say he's in my bottom 3 Doctors, but I don't hate him. So I'm very conflicted right now, because if I
it's a weird one. It's kind of like the Sixth Doctor in that I think, for example, if you listen to his Big Finish work, I think he rises massively up, in my opinion, based on that. And like I said, if you just class his Doctor, put him in better stories, I think, with, I hate saying this, but better writing, and I think your opinion would go up.
Your thoughts on 5 in terms of like hit for the character, but a lot of his stories are a kind of meh. That is exactly my thoughts on 13.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I love. I'm going to say this now, because it will get mentioned later. But I absolutely love the 13th Doctor. I think Jodie is actually really, really good in the role. However, I think a lot of the writing lets her down.
Okay. I wouldn't argue with you on that. I'm not pinning you to a wall disagreeing.
Because like I always, if I was asked like, oh, what's your least favorite series, I would without a doubt say series 11, no question. However, it's not down to the fact that the Doctor's a woman, blah blah blah. It's not that sort of thing at all. It's just the writing itself, in my opinion, for series 11 was a massive step down compared to what we'd had in the previous 10 seasons. Which is a shame because I actually thoroughly enjoy Jodie's performance. I just think the writing doesn't give her as much to work with.
I completely agree, and at the time, I think my opinion of Series 11's gone up on rewatches because I think there's a lot more that we didn't realise at the time because it is undeniably, I think, a step down on the overall writing side of things. And I remember when it first went out that was my opinion I was putting out there, but at the same time, I hated that you're getting a lot of these, not my Doctor types and stuff that are like, oh yeah, you see, because it's a woman. And I'm like, no, I'm criticising the writer, who's a man. I'm not criticising the actress.
Yeah, none of the issues are to do with the fact that the main character is now a woman and there's more like representation across the board for minorities. None of that is an issue. The issue is with a cis white male writer.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Anyway, sorry to go on that little tangent there.
Yeah, Will, are you there?
Will, 5th Doctor?
That was a very entertaining and thrilling listen. Somehow we spoke about the 11th Doctor, the 13th Doctor again. There we go. The 5th Doctor would be a soft hit for me. Soft hit.
Same kind of thing, yeah. Not great stories, but a good performance.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very.
yeah.
If we didn't have to pick one or the other, I'd just say middle ground. I wouldn't say hit or miss, but
I would still say hit for the character because you said 5th Doctor, I would say hit. If you said 5th Doctor's era, I would say miss.
okay. Next one is another Doctor, the 9th Doctor.
Andrew?
Let's see how we get Jodie into this.
Shall I just assume I'm going first every time?
Yeah, we like to
go for it.
the first.
9th Doctor, absolute hit. It's really funny because like I don't know if I'd put him in my top 5, but I still absolutely love him. It's just more a case of which Doctors I'm more attached to. But 9 is definitely a hit. He's, for the short tenure that Christopher Eccleston had, he was phenomenal in the role. I really, really love the 9th Doctor. There we go. Moving on.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say don't skip the 9th, because a lot of people were already doing that. And my thoughts on the 9th Doctor can be best expressed by the man himself.
Before I go, I just want to tell you were fantastic.
There we go.
Whew. Faith in humanity restored. It's
So,
a hit
yeah,
for me as well.
for me,
Absolutely fantastic.
there we go.
Alright, let's get through these last 3 because we have spent a long time on this section.
Yeah.
To be fair, we are making up for the lack of time in the first section on this day.
Yeah, we didn't start until 10 past, if it's any consolation, so we're only actually on 50 minutes right about now.
Yeah.
Mine's saying 59 minutes, but I think I was recording before.
You were, yeah.
Okay. Next one, K9.
Andrew?
So I actually, no, to be fair, I've watched most of the 4th Doctor's stuff, and I've watched all of Sarah Jane. I think overall, as a character who appears intermittently, I think he's a hit. I think if he appeared more, I'd like him less. I think he'd grate on me a little bit, but as it stands with the appearances he did have, I'd give him a hit overall.
I just need a tiny point of clarification from you, Will, please.
Oh.
Are you there?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Are we talking K9 in just Doctor Who, or are we having to include K9 the series?
Just K9.
Yeah, in terms of just Doctor Who, or also throwing in the Sarah Jane adventures as well?
All of it. Yeah. Okay.
But if you had to include the series K9, it would drag it to a miss because that series is not good. I'm sorry.
I didn't quite catch what Andrew said because he cut out.
Oh, go ahead. You can repeat it then, Andrew. Thanks.
Oh, I didn't realise. No, I was just saying. So, with the experiences I've had of watching most of the Fourth Doctor's era and all of Sarah Jane, I haven't really seen much of his series. I think I saw like the first episode, if I'm remembering correctly. But from the appearances he does have, I would say he's a hit. But I think if he appeared more, that would go down because I think he'd start to grate on me. Whereas I think he appears just enough for me to like him and not get annoyed by him.
Yeah, but I know he's not a good character, like a great character, but he doesn't annoy me, so I can't say miss because it's again very middle ground. I don't have any strong opinions on him.
Well, I'll jump in here then and say that I kind of do because I really love the character.
Okay.
I recognise the joke that the show itself makes that he's kind of very disco, but I think he's the perfect example of you've got to bear in mind that it's a kids show. I know appeal to kids, and on that level, I think he completely
100%.
works because it's such it's a silly concept. You're a kid, robot dog is the coolest thing in the world,
Yeah,
and
I get that.
there's of themselves to kids, 38-year-old men who happen to have remote control versions of him in the past, But, so I think the character's really.
I have a remote control K9 in the flat.
Oh, mine's been sold, but I did have a remote control K9. I did get it.
So
one
did
Christmas.
I. I found a toy at one stage in my
Absolutely,
life.
yeah.
For fans anyway.
Um,
But I don't know where mine has gone actually. I have it somewhere.
for a final in terms of the kind of the humour of K9 and there's a brilliant gag in there about how when Alan had his mental breakdown, he sort of gorged on Toblerone, drove to Dundee in his bare feet, and I'm quoting exactly here, he bought the rights to K9, the robot dog on casters from Doctor Who, which is basically presented as being a terrible business decision.
No.
But if that were true, come on, man, he'd be a wise man.
That's funny. Final two guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Meyer.
Oh,
What was that? The
Girl Who
Myra?
Died.
the Meyer
The Meyer
from
from The
Girl
Girl
Who
Who
Died,
Died.
yeah.
Oh, for the girl who died. Right. Okay, I'm with you now. I know there are some people who genuinely really like that episode, and I don't dislike it. But overall, they're pretty unmemorable for me. I'd probably give them either a soft hit or a soft miss. I'm very on the fence about them. I don't really care either way.
We
you
need
don't
a
mind,
committal one way or the other.
If you
Oh,
don't mind,
damn.
I'll go second. Andrew, do you
Oh,
want to say hit or miss?
I'll go a soft miss.
I'll go soft hit. Soft hit for me.
Okay, and I'll say
It's a miss for me, Will.
yeah. I don't like the design. I think it kind of looks ridiculous, and I don't like the kind of world destroying nature of anybody who can effectively make you functionally immortal. I think it's a dumb idea. And that's kind of that's intrinsically tied to that particular species because it's their main thing.
That's
So
fair.
yeah, I'll not say any more
Very
because
fair.
we'll be on here all day.
Okay. I rewatched that episode recently in my Capaldi rewatch, and I really liked it. I liked the first part far more than the second part. But yeah, I don't understand the dislike towards it because some people, not just the Maya, but the episode in general, it's not. I don't think it's a bad episode. But
I
that's
haven't
for
rewatched
for
it.
debate.
I haven't rewatched it, but I think a lot of people just didn't like how kind of silly parts of it were.
Oh, the CGI with the bloke in the cloud was really stupid.
Yes, it
It
was.
looked awful.
I
Yeah.
don't dislike that two-part story. It's definitely on the weaker part of Series 9, which is like Series 9 as a whole. I think is one of the best series, but that was a lower point. It's not bad, but it's a lower point in the series as a whole. But I do think it serves well enough as set up for Ashilda's character, which is, it did that job fine. So
I think your opinion of those episodes, though, is tied to your opinion of that character, and I just don't like it. I love Macy Williams as an actress, and I think she's doing a fantastic job. But again, I don't. You make any character that level of immortal, and I think it's just dumb, and it kind of ruins the show.
Final one. the Doctor Who experience, which can only be stated if you've actually been there. Have you two been there?
I have not.
I have not either.
I have, and I would give it a hit. Well, that was an anticlimactic end.
Well, I'll quickly jump in for the sake of not just giving that an anticlimax and say I haven't been to the actual Doctor Who experience, but I did go to a Doctor Who event that was on at the Centre for Life in Newcastle,
Right.
which was very similar. It was kind of monster costumes, and there was actually a room you went into, and Davros and the Daleks would appear and do like a laser show and stuff, and it was fantastic. Myself and my little brother Sam, shout out, went to go and see that. And it was great. I've got tons of pictures of myself next to like Cyberman suits or Astrid's costume from Voyage of the Damned or whatever. And yeah, I had the best time. So.
I can interject with something similar. I don't know if this was I think it's not the one that's in Cardiff or anything now, but there was for a few years, me and my family always used to go on holiday down to Cornwall, and in Land's End there was a Doctor Who experience. Probably a smaller one than the main one, but you walked through and there was loads of costumes and like some scenes played out. Kind of similar to what you said. I'm pretty sure there was a Davros Dalek sort of laser light show, but
Yes.
that was really good when we went. I really enjoyed that, so I'll give that a hit.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, absolutely.
Well then, that was the hit or miss section. That was very long compared to the other two, I think.
And we haven't even gotten into what's going to be a really long episode review as well. Oh, this is
So now we're on to the episode review, but it's technically the episode review because it's a two-parter. And would you guys like to reveal what it is?
I'll let the guest do that.
Oh, thank you. So, since the first episode, they reviewed the Unearthly Child, obviously being the first episode, we decided for the second episode we'd go all the way to the end and review essentially the Cyberman / the Timeless Children. Strap in, folks. This one's going to be interesting.
The thing is, I didn't even realise that. That's a really good introduction. I didn't
That's what I
realise we did
typed that to you. That's literally why I suggested we do that.
that. Really?
Well, at least you paid attention, Andrew, because that was my point.
No.
You're
You just made me
welcome.
feel bad. No.
I
Right.
specifically said, oh, since we're doing the first episode in episode 1, episode 2, we'll do the most recent episode. That'll be cool.
God damn it.
And controversial.
And yeah, lots to say.
But that's why I thought you picked it. But, just to clarify, there is a leaderboard we're going to be doing, and it won't include episode 3 because that comes out after this one. But we've got an Earthly Child, and I'll just tell you the rating. It was 5.3, I think it came up to.
As an
And
average, yeah.
and it's basically it's an average of the three.
We probably
slots.
shouldn't tell them episode 3s because that's kind of a spoiler.
No,
so-
we're not giving episode 3, and likewise in episode 1, that's the first one on the leaderboard.
Cool.
But like that, whatever we rate this episode, it will be averaged and put onto the podcast leaderboard. And if this becomes above an Earthly Child, man, I'll be shocked. Actually, I won't be shocked, but I disagree. I love an Earthly Child. I can't say it properly today. I've been able to say it properly, but
We know what you mean, it's fine.
yeah. So guys, would you guys like to provide your overall summary without being spoilery of the
Yeah.
two-parter?
I'm gonna
Don't
again,
spoil anything.
you know, you're the guest, Andrew, so we'll yield to you to go first.
Okay, no problem. So I want to, before I go into my main thoughts on this two-part, I want to just preface it by saying that I know that Haunting of Villa Diodati is kind of a first part to this two-parter.
Yeah, it's kind of like
and-
Utopia and Sound of Drums.
Yeah,
After
yeah.
Time in that way.
It's kind of like Turn Left as well as to Film Earth and Journeys In, where it is technically a first part, but it's a completely separate story. I just want to say that I love Haunting of Villa Diodati. I think it's a really good episode. Which it's not going to affect my overall rating, but I just wanted to throw that in there just so that people know that I did consider that part of the story.
Okay.
Anyway, so overall, I think essentially the Cybermen and the Timeless Children is it's an ambitious finale that I don't necessarily dislike, but it definitely has a lot of flaws.
Okay. Is that?
I will also say as well, I'm just looking at my notes trying to see which ones are going to be not too spoilery. Okay, yeah. I'll go with that. So I think it's pretty ambitious. It definitely has flaws. I think I would have preferred it if the second part was a bit less of just a huge exposition dump. And where's the maiden? Oh yeah, and I also think it would be better if Chibnall just changed his writing style up a little bit, because it has elements of what he has been doing throughout his era, which has always bugged me, which is just having characters explain exactly what is happening in every single scene in detail, and just kind of making me as a viewer feel really talked down to, which bugs me.
I get that in other episodes, but I think you're referring to when they explain what all the equipment does in the start.
Oh, we'll get to that, but yeah, I didn't have an issue with that because
you did have an issue with that. I
didn't have an issue with that. Well, I'll jump to it now because I did make a note and said it was nice that was a cool Easter egg. You know, you've got to bear in mind that there might be people watching this who have no idea about the Cybermen, and it was kind of cool to fill in. You know, they have a weakness to gold, and you know, they can go crazy if you open them up to emotions. And I thought that Bradley.
Sorry, go on.
I thought Bradley and Mandip were really good at delivering the exposition, but seeming naturalistic, like because they were telling the kind of human resistance fighters, and I thought they were really good. I thought Tosin unfortunately wasn't, but I don't think he's great at acting generally, and certainly not when you give him exposition.
That was one of my
Oh,
notes,
I'm so glad that you two agree with me on that.
Yeah,
I was just going to say though,
jeez.
that is not the part I was going to mention. I actually didn't mind that part at all with the explaining the Cyberman weakness. It was just there were parts later on, particularly in the Timeless Children, where it's nearly always 13, and it's bad because, again, I said I love Jodie's performance, but there are definitely parts in the Timeless Children where Jodie just kind of just exposition dumps, like, the Masters built this immortal race of Cybermen using Time Lord bodies, and I'm like, thanks for that, I got that. Why did you now just have to tell us, or straight out?
I'll push back against that and say that was the briefest possible way you could do it, whilst also allowing the other characters to know that, because otherwise there's no reason why they would. Like, fair enough, you as the audience are aware of that, but she's telling the characters. It's not like it would be really egregious if she'd stopped and said, well, there's these things called the Time Lords, and they can regenerate, and it turns out the Master can do experiments really well, and, you know, the Cybermen are kind of convert. But it's literally a one-sentence thing to fill in the guys that are there, just so that you know they know.
I know, and it's definitely not the most egregious example of that. Without a doubt, it isn't the biggest offender, but it was just the one that came to mind then.
But before you dive,
I think personally that's a bit unfair, but okay.
I just want to give my summary quickly. It was a
I'll
story
give mine after you then.
Okay, sorry, I thought you gave yours, but I'll go into now. A story that provided a solid return for the Cybermen, but dove into territory that didn't need to be explored, in my opinion. Though that was perhaps done for Chibnall to leave his mark on the show, which is definitely done. With good performances and CGI alike, it's a very pretty story. Very brief summary, no spoilers.
Okay.
But there we go.
I did the same. I kind of wrote a brief summary out, so apologies if it sounds like I'm reading, but with these episodes in particular, I kind of wanted to be clear, so I'll possibly be reading because it's typed like a book report in this case. So what I said, without getting into kind of actual hit or miss territory, these episodes are a lot. There's so much happening, and it sometimes clashes. It seems long and a bit exhausting when you're watching them back to back, 2 parts. It relies a lot on what's come before. I think if this was the first episode you'd ever watched, you'd be incredibly lost. But it still somehow feels unfinished, like it's doing big things but not bothering to tell you the complete story, which I hate. It looks gorgeous. The acting is mostly brilliant. It's cool how it gets into nerdy sci-fi territory, because I personally like that as a kind of a Doctor Who fan and a sci-fi geek, but I can understand how some people might be put off by it. It takes really big swings, that's undeniable, and it's definitely not boring, which is about all I can say about it.
Wow.
See, funnily enough, I'd agree with pretty much everything you've just said, apart from, in parts, I did find myself getting bored.
Oh, same. Thank God you mentioned it. I was so bored in part 2 especially.
Not
Oh my
because it
God.
was necessarily bad, but I
Oh,
think
no,
it's
no,
just
no.
the way, I think it's the way it's structured that doesn't really help, but we'll get into that as we go through
Yeah,
the,
Okay.
that was
episode.
mostly in episode 2, which we'll get onto later.
Mhm.
Who wants to start? Well, let's talk about the pre-title sequence first. What do you guys
Yes.
think of that? I really liked that. I really enjoyed that.
Is this
It was
for
nothing
Ascension?
spectacular. This is Ascension, yeah. We'll go
I-
chronological order.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed the pre-title sequence. I thought it looked very pretty, and I liked the way it was done.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I loved it. It's I absolutely loved it because I thought that it was a brilliant directing decision to zoom in and go through the Cyberman's eye into the vortex.
That was
Yeah,
one
I
of the
liked
as
that a
well.
lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and yeah, that was my first question. Was that personally, I really prefer having a cold open to just going straight into the credits. And I know it's
Thank
the
you,
Chibnall's
yes.
era doesn't really do it.
I think
So would you
most
guys
people would
agree or not?
I think most people would agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I
Having
agree.
a pre-title sequence, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
I also think I mean, I'll get into this more later on, but I also think something that really helps that opening sequence be as good as I think it is the fact that they had Ashad narrate it, and I think
Yes.
he is a really interesting character. And his voice and his presence adds a lot.
100%.
It's also great setup because it gives you, if you don't mind, I'll feed this into my second point. I think it gives you a really cool setup by mentioning the fact that, there's cyber wars and what's gone on, and it's like a cool sci-fi idea, and you're like, oh, we're going to deal with Cyberman wars and everything. And then my second note was, it's a terrible choice to then start the episode by going straight to these island scenes, which
Yes.
are baffling. At this point, we don't know anything about it. So it's like, you don't mention like, oh, the last of humanity is making a stand against the Cybermen. What'll happen? Oh, well, just don't worry about that. Here in Ireland, I was like, oh, what? What are you doing?
It's like,
I can understand,
don't go from cyber wars to Guinness and potatoes. Like, give
Yeah.
us some of the cyber wars first.
But the
Yeah.
thing is, this is the enigma. I mean, I really like it. Well, I don't really like it, but I like to do like that subplot of the episode. But then I don't like
don't.
what it actually turns out to be.
See, I don't like it at all, but again, just to chuck in a couple of notes, it also doesn't make sense with the reveal because that particular moment in that scene, for no reason, they're the wrong genders. Like, it's a man who finds a baby boy, but we later find out that Tecteun is a woman who finds a baby girl. So I don't quite get what that choice was about.
Different race
I
as
mean,
well,
I
different race
ha-
and gender. Sorry, go
Yeah.
for it.
Well, I mean, naturally. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I also think the Ireland stuff, I think, is Chibnall at his most pretentious. It just really jars, and I don't understand the choice to do that, to explain such a big thing away in that way. And I remember at the time I hated the fact that it wasn't explained, and I was like, what is this? What's going on?
I can now understand why
yeah.
you don't like the Big Bang, because it's very similar principles.
I was
okay.
just about to say, I don't know if this sounds a bit mean, I don't mean for it to, but it feels like Chibnall trying to do Moffat
Yeah.
in terms of the structure. It's because Moffat does that thing a lot where, like, he'll show us something and then it'll, like, we'll go back in time and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're here now.
Yeah, that's
But-
why I alluded to the
Yeah.
Big Bang.
Whereas I think
Yeah.
Moffat does it in a way that, at least for me, ultimately ends up feeling satisfying. In this instance, it wasn't done as well.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I feel like I don't hate Chibnall in the era on the level some people do, but this really seemed, and it might just be me, it seemed to me like when all was said and done, the reveal of it was kind of like, I see, the Ireland scenes were this thing. Aren't I clever? I'm like, no.
No, he wasn't.
Not really.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I just want to mention before we go any further, the color grading and the actual art of the episode was absolutely brilliant. It was fantastic. It was beautiful.
I've made that note a few times, but I'll mention it
Yeah,
when we get there.
my second note of the whole thing was just looks stunning, because it really does. For all
I
the
said the same.
flaws that the Chibnall era has had so far, visually it has nearly always been gorgeous to look at.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Except from the light flares, which were annoying.
Yeah, I also made a note of that later on.
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
I didn't notice so much in this episode, but it did become. It was very overbearing in other episodes.
Bear in mind though,
especially.
yeah. Bear in mind though that I'm a huge Trekkie, so I've had to live with the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. So unless you're literally like ridiculously in my face with lens flare, I'm not gonna notice because it's never gonna be as bad as that.
Oh, before I forget, I'm just going to bring this up now because I know I made a note of it. I made a note of it twice. I made a note of it near the end of Ascension, but then I know for a fact I made a note of it in the big climax of part 2 where 13's like, okay, I'm going to go blow myself up on my planet and the Master and hope it solves everything. The lens flares in that scene are horrendous because it just completely ruins the emotion of that scene for me. It's like, Yaz is really emotional, 13's really emotional, Ryan's being a brick like usual, but like, the emotions are there.
Yeah.
The emotions are right there, and I want to feel it, but then this horrendous lighting just cuts through 13's face, and I'm like, no, stop that!
I want to disagree because I didn't really notice it, but because of what you said, I'm going to give the same level of commitment that Ryan did to that scene and just go, Andrew, stop, come back.
Oh, that was accurate. Okay, right, anyway, back to Ascension. Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
I have to mention this because I made a note of this specifically for you, Will, because the Doctor does do this in this moment. It's the nitpick that you mentioned that I also hate. How is she reading the Sonic? And it's not just her, they all do it, but you scan for life signs, and then she looks at a piece of metal and goes, ooh, there's like 4 humans. What are you reading? There's no display on it.
That's an interesting topic because all the Doctors do it, especially in Modern Who.
Yeah.
And I think it must be... the canon explanation I've given, it must be telepathic.
Yeah, which would be cool, but like, just put an LCD display on the side of it.
The only time that's ever really worked is when 12 had the sunglasses because they literally did have screens in them.
Yeah, or just point it, perhaps it sounds ridiculous, but if you're going to have it be, oh, it's a psychic thing, then have them tap it against the side of their head. Don't have them reading a blank piece of metal.
It must be telepathic. I love to see like an explanation of that. There must be an article out there somewhere where like a showrunner and like RTD or Moffat or whoever, they just explain it. There must be, because otherwise it just doesn't
I don't
make
think
sense.
there is, but I do think it's way more of a New Who thing, because in Old Who, they would have a separate device that would be a scanning device as opposed to just, oh, we'll just make a noise with the screwdriver and say that it's got readings on that aren't there.
It feels like the sort of thing that Moffat would explain, though, because he does that a lot in interviews where he'll just go into detail about why he chose to do a certain thing.
I haven't seen that, but I will look that up later.
Likewise, I'll be really interested. That's a good point. Well, I'm just reading my notes now and thinking, how could we pedal this on?
I can do it if you want, because I've got mine in.
Do you guys have any notes?
I had one just to bring it back to the point I made earlier about the explaining everything in detail and making it like what was the exact word I used? Explaining what's happening in detail in every scene, that sort of thing. I made a note of saying 4 minutes in and we already have an exposition dump, and that's just because of the part where obviously, as a viewer, we know what's happening with the Cybermen already because we've had it kind of explained to us in The Haunting of Villa Diodati with Ashad, and then we had it explained again in the opening title sequence of Ascension. But then after the opening title sequence, when they're stood on that like hill looking down at the human settlement camp, Jodie then explains once again about the cyber wars and the fact that they wiped out humanity. I'm like, we've already done this.
I don't think we did. To be fair, I haven't rewatched Haunting, but I don't think she mentions the cyber wars or anything there. And again, I think this is an example of where that criticism isn't justified, because I noticed that if you haven't seen Villa Diodati, the fact that she says, oh yeah, look, these are the coordinates I got from Shelley, you'd have no idea what she's talking about. But she doesn't stop and explain all of that to kind of catch the audience up, because the characters would know. So I thought that was an example of a good kind of, like, I don't get where that criticism's coming from kind of.
Well, yeah, that's fair enough. I rewatched Haunting just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure it gets mentioned during the scene where they're fighting over the Siberium, or like around there. I'm pretty sure it's somewhat mentioned that, like, you know, they'll go on to wipe out humanity and blah blah blah. So I feel like that was mentioned to Ryan, Yaz, and Graham before, but I might be wrong. It was just me noting
I
that.
couldn't say without seeing the episode, but yeah, so I won't jump in.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
My next note, if you don't mind, Will, if you want me to carry on, yeah.
Yeah, you go for it.
I just said that the location work is great. It looks dishevelled. Where the last survivors of humanity are, it looks like it's been wrecked and destroyed. I think the ships and the weapon designs are actually really fantastic. So shout out to the prop designers as well as the VFX, because it's a combination of both, and I think both do a really good job. As Doctor Who fans, we're aware of the Dalek spaceship that's just a really badly hung up saucer on a string. And this is like worlds away from that, so I think it's
Yeah,
really
I made a note saying that the cyber ships looked awesome.
Agreed.
Oh, they do. What would you guys think about the cyber drones?
That was one of my next notes.
Yeah, same here.
They're a bit nuts. Let's be honest. But I wouldn't say they're a problem. I wouldn't dislike them. But would you?
I'll let you go, Andrew, because yeah.
I'll just read my note out. I just put that they're a neat idea, but I don't like the fact that they were just flying Cyberman heads.
I more or less, I said that I find them laughable. I think it's ridiculous. But I also think they're a very RTD Moffat-seeming idea. Like, you could tell me these are from any of their Cyberman episodes and I'd believe you. So it kind of seems on brand, but it still looks ridiculous. However, I did note that the director himself seems to realise this, so that most of the scene takes place using the actual heads-up display of the Cyberman head. And it's a good decision to add that menace, because you're not seeing Cyberman heads floating around zapping people, which would look stupid. But you're seeing, the actual point of view of a weapon destroying folk, and I think the sound design there really, works extra well as well.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But generally, the first 10 minutes of the episode were very good, in my opinion, with some comedic lines and exposition that wasn't overbearing.
Completely.
In my opinion. But the first 10, 15 minutes, excellent.
Yeah, just because we've skipped it over as well in terms of if we're mentioning the first few minutes, I had to mention that I think Jodie is fantastic, taking charge and giving gravitas to kind of like, this is the last stand against the Cybermen.
My next note after the Cyber Drones thing was just me saying that I love Angry 13. Like, I love that moment of her not just asking her companions, just telling them, you need to go, and just getting actually angry with them when they like argue back. I love that.
And angry with herself, kind of like, I've been really reckless, and then the actual gravitas she gives to "you're human. If they find you, they will convert you." And it's like, that sounded terrifying when she said it, and it's like,
I think that's one of the best performances.
Yeah, I'd agree. For all the flaws this two-parter has, Jodie's performance throughout the whole thing is pretty much spot on.
Completely agree. Well, that's the thing. I mean, she does exhibit kind of a lot of anger at her companions at various times. Certainly Ryan, I think, more than the other two. But again, I think that's probably more because Jodie's just trying to show the poor guy how to act in any scene they get together. But, it is kind of like trying to elicit a reaction from a brick wall a lot of the time, but still.
But he's got chips, though.
Yeah, it's all right, though. Don't worry.
But no, I agree with what you just said as well, because immediately when you said that, my first thought was back, like even as far back as, well, probably the classics as well, but the first example that came to my mind was in Girl in the Fireplace, when the Doctor's like, don't wander off, and then Mickey and Rose are immediately like, right, where we're going.
Yeah, and even he says, like, they always do that. They never listen.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I just circling back, I absolutely love 13 in pretty much this whole thing, but in that scene in particular, I think she's really, really, really good.
Okay. Do you want to carry on, Will, or do you want me to take the reins?
Well, I thought I'll just continue with my next point, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
The episode, like I said, the first 10-15 minutes were very good in my opinion. I liked the acting, the direction, the special effects. But then when Yaz and Graham reached the spaceship, every scene on board the ship is dry, uninspired, and circumstances are only utilised to have Graham moan about their negativity, which is kind of ironic, actually, because I'm literally just being negative right now. But I didn't like the scenes on the spaceship.
Okay.
Did
That's
you?
fair enough.
Did you guys?
Just before we get into that stuff, I just wanted to make a note, because I did make a specific note of a little bit before that. is that I love, just because I know we wanted to focus on different sections, I love the motif of the Cyberman that plays when Ashad first walks in. I think that's really good.
Yeah, similar. I've put similar notes. I think that scene. I'll get to the cyber scenes on the ship and everything, but I thought that scene was great because that scene really reminded me of a horror movie. You know, you had the off-screen danger that was looming and the tension building because you didn't see it. It wasn't like cutting back to them getting there, and they were relentlessly marching. I think I've said Ashad is a really cool concept, but I've put the word wasted with a question mark. Because like he gets 3 episodes, he's well developed, but it doesn't really seem like the potential is fully used.
Yeah, I put that later on.
And I've said I get where the character comes from though, and I think it's really clever that he's basically the Cyberman's equivalent of Davros. Like I've seen interviews with Terry Nation where he says that Davros exists because it gives the Doctor someone to interact with because the Daleks can't, because they're all robotic and so it gives you that chance to have an actual sort of human voice answering you back. And I totally get that. That's why Ashad exists. But I've also got another. I like the character a lot, but I've also said that that's why the character exists, to give you the kind of the two humans arguing side of things. But I've also put the question: but is he then a Cyberman? Because he's way too emotional and doesn't seem connected to any hive mind or anything. He just seems like a dude in a suit of armor.
That's addressed in part 2, I think.
Yeah,
so,
that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I just, because I made quite a few notes about this, but I think the intro shot of him walking through the fire with the Cyberman is really cool. And I also put, just in terms of another direction point, because I didn't really make many of those, because I'm not really that knowledgeable in the direction. I loved how in the scene, I think it was a chapel or a church or something, where Ashad's like looking for, I can't remember his name, but one of the human characters, I think Ryan's there with him. There's a really good use of sunlight. So like the sunlight's coming in through the window, and it completely shines on Ashad's like Cyberman part, but then the shadow obscures the human part, and I thought that was really nicely done.
Yeah,
I've made the exact same note, and I think you know more about direction than you're letting it, because that is deliberate. That's a deliberate choice. Because he looks the way he does, they specifically obscure the human side, so you just see the monster looming, and you only see the Cyberman half.
Yeah, I just thought that was really nicely done in that one particular shot. I really liked that, so I wanted to make a specific note of that.
I said the same thing, and I also said the music in this scene. I'm critical of Sega Nakanola a lot of the time, but the music itself seems like it's been cyberized, and it goes kind of slow motion and horror-like, intense, and I thought that was a fantastic musical choice.
Yeah, I agree. I really like the Cyberman motif he did for these episodes.
Are you talking about the actual music that was adapted from the theme, or are you actually talking about the theme he actually made for the Cybermen?
No, the actual it's more noticeable in this particular scene. I think it's a little bit different. So I think when we get to the ship, it kind of gets a little bit too overbearing. But here, it's really good because it's kind of it almost goes from just kind of regular this is tense music to having a kind of cyberized edge, and I don't know music enough to say what that means. I don't know if it's
it definitely develops more of an electronic techno feel to it, but almost in a sinister way. I think it's very well utilized here.
Over the course of the episode, the actual soundtrack I really enjoy, but the one bit I do not like is how it's less about the composer, more of the editing. The theme is used every single time the Cybermen are remotely in a scene. It's that same beat, and I think, why not just adapt that into the soundtrack and have the soundtrack playing intense music, not just the same beats over and over again.
I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think that, for me, that's kind of showing the weakness between Murray Gold and Sega Nakanola, because Murray Gold did that. If you listen to like the soundtracks, he's got like a 5 or 6 long piece that's the Cyberman, but there's such variation in that, and as you said, when it's playing, it doesn't overwhelm the action, so you don't notice. But, and especially in the later scenes on the Cyber Carrier, the music is overwhelming to the point that it's drowning out dialogue. And like I get this is scary, you should, and it's doing that musical thing where it's making you way more aware that it's trying to manipulate you, because it's basically, you may as well have Sega Nakanola on a microphone going, "Be scared now."
I think are you referring to the scene where they burst through the door and they start shooting?
Any scene on the Cyber Carrier, because it's the most tense moments. So like any time you have that scene, anytime there's whether they're there or then Ashad and the 2 guards, or then meeting the Cyber Warriors. So yeah, it's not really a chronological order kind of thing, but like I made a note that I loved the music for the first kind of 15, 20 minutes, but then it just gets ridiculous and overbearing because it seems like they're trying to overcompensate for wanting to make you feel the fear, and it's like, I'm not scared, I'm just peed off that I can't hear what's being said.
Yeah. I made a note a bit later on that kind of ties into this, where as a whole, not just really these two parters, but just for the era as a whole, Sega Nakanola, his score, it's very pleasant to listen to, but I'd also argue that it's very subtle and nothing is particularly memorable. Apart from that one motif when Ashad first appears, I think that's like the most memorable piece of music he's done so far. Whereas for the most part, I find his stuff a lot more subtle and not as memorable as what Murray Gold normally did. Normally did in his.
I completely agree, but I'd also say that I think his Gallifrey theme when we get there is also pretty good. But it's he's hampered by the fact that it's obviously not a patch on This Is Gallifrey or Our Childhood, Our Home or any of the Murray Gold stuff that he did for Gallifrey, which is so good that he's fighting a losing battle there, essentially.
Yeah, but the thing with Murray Gold, he's had 10 years to fine-tune his craft, but the thing is, Murray Gold, I could say that experience plays a part, but then again, Murray Gold hit out the park from Series 1, so I can't really use that argument when Murray Gold was great from the very start. When Sega Nakanola, I think I mentioned this in another episode of the podcast, he's got maybe 3 or 4 very good, memorable scores, maybe 3. Whereas Murray Gold's, if you played about 30, if you played out his whole soundtrack, there would be 30 very memorable ones.
Yeah, and I've actually done that. I don't have the CDs or anything. I'm not that rich, but I've got the Amazon Echo, and they're kind of available through Amazon Music. So I've played I'll play Series 1, 2, or 3 soundtrack, and it's all like brilliant, and you recognise where the scene is it comes from. And then you ask it to play the Series 11 soundtrack, and I've constantly got to ask the Echo, "What is this?" And it'll be like, "This is Ghost Monument from Ghost Monument."
Yeah,
is it?
I follow him on Spotify, and pretty much all of his soundtrack stuff is on Spotify, and I love re-listening to a lot of his stuff. Particularly in particular, Series 5, Series 6, and Series 9 are ones that I definitely listen to a lot, because I think there's a lot of really, really good stuff in that.
I'm glad we're on the same page with that, because I've heard other podcasts and things that are like really raving about the music and saying that Akinola's a step up and stuff, and I don't see that. No. So,
I mean, I like the
Murray Gold had a talent for taking. I was just going to say, Murray Gold has a talent for just. Sorry, I think I'm just going on a bit of a tangent because I'm a musician, but a good example for what Murray Gold can do with so little. Just listen to The Shepherd's Boy. That song, for the most part, is the same 4 chords, just over and over, but with new stuff added, and then it changes slightly every now and then it just changes key, but still does the same sort of progression. And it's a really good example of how much he can do and how much emotion he can draw out of you with just what is essentially just one set of looping 4 chords.
Yeah. Okay.
Just what to say about the music. I really like the direction he's went down. While I don't, like I said, I don't find the music very memorable. I like how he's went into the electronic approach, the electro music, and I think it's very. Since we've had 10 years of very orchestra music, I think this is a nice change of pace. So I wouldn't say he's a bad composer. He's far from.
I don't think he's bad by any means.
No, but it's not as memorable, obviously. But I wouldn't say he's bad. He's a competent composer, clearly. But
yeah.
Fair enough. Just in the interest of getting us to where you are, which was, I think you were on the Grav Raft, Will.
Yeah.
So I've made another note that in between that we get another flash to the island scenes, and I've just said that every time we flash to the Brendan stuff, it kills the momentum and it just kills the episode dead.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was just going to say I thought exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and that's another example of them getting the details, like the big reveal of things doesn't make sense, because here, before the very first time that Brendan regenerates, in inverted commas, when he gets killed, he's already kind of a garter working for those police force. And we see that the Doctor obviously wasn't recruited to the division before the first regeneration, so again, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I never made that parallel before. Actually, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like it's on a kind of on a chase of a criminal where Brendan first kind of gets pushed off the cliff and dies, and it's like, oh, I'm okay, and they kind of do this, oh, is that a Captain Jack thing or whatever? But like I said, the Doctor's regenerated like 20, 30 times by then before getting recruited to the division, because we've had all the experiments that Tech the Undid and everything. So again, it's kind of Chibnall trying to be clever and then just completely screwing up his own logic.
And just as a whole, I do find the island stuff just very tonally jarring. Like,
Yes.
it would... Maybe if it was... I don't know whether it's the pacing or whether it's just the way that it was cut into it that didn't work for me, but just overall, every time it cut to island, in the middle of, like, quite a intense moment as well, I just found myself going, oh, we're back here again. Oh, okay. Which I think just completely kills the pacing.
Agreed. I've also said, when they're on the Grav raft, I've made a note of the fact that the lighting is very red, and that's kind of the mood, is nervous tension and everything. They feel isolated, and it's a really cool pull out to the cyber debris field, which is great shorthand for the war in like that one kind of director's visual. There's a good callback to the Ghost Monument in Yaz and Graham saying that they've experienced being in space. And when they get to the cyber carrier ship, I think it's fantastic. The CGI scene extension is flawless. You can't really tell, so it looks way bigger than I presume it is. And the lighting specifically goes from red to blue. And I made a note of saying, oh, that's to show that it's gotten cold. And then Julie Graham literally says in the scene, it's cold. So I was like, oh, well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I did just on the cyber carrier. I did put a little note saying that I liked that shot of when Yaz looks out the window and then you see all the sort of Cyberman parts.
That was the scene I was on about, yeah.
How it was, it was just drifting through space, and then you hear these bangs, and you think, what is that? And then you look out the window, and they are literally going through all the Cybermen parts, and I thought that was well directed and well edited, because I liked how they faded the banging into their dialogue scene before, and then when the reveal actually came out, I was like, this is great.
Cool. The next note that I've made is that I've said Ko-Shamus, when they show those scenes, that
was my
it's
very
kind
next
of great.
note.
It's the opposite of the Brendan stuff. I really like it because the music is great. I think the location is gorgeous, and it gives a kind of mythical quality, which I think adds to the history of the cyber wars.
I think it's also because that character looks like he's just been extracted from a Harry Potter
Completely.
movie.
Yeah. It's. I don't think it's an accident that they cast a fairly big name from Game of Thrones either, so that you immediately see the actor and you kind of you have visions of dragons and swords and warriors and stuff.
Yeah, the special effects team here out of the park in this episode.
Agreed.
In the story in general, the how it transitioned and the point of view of it going over the cliff top, the spaceship going over the cliff top, that was great.
Any of the scenes where any of the scenes that looked like, I don't know if they are, but they looked like helicopter shots where you were zooming in from kind of a gorgeous vista of a sea to an island, and Ko-Shamus is there. It's so good.
Completely agree.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The next thing I've got was about the Cyber Warrior. So did you guys have anything you wanted to chuck in first?
I just put that I actually really like the design. I think it's quite a cool design, and it's a nice sort of mixing of some of the newer aspects, and then it took a lot from, I think it's the 5th Doctor era Cybermen design.
Yeah, it's similar.
Cool.
Well,
I've
I
just
don't
put
know. Can I just
No, go
have
ahead.
a question? I need something answered from you guys. What was the deal about the general guy electrocuting with Cybermen with the gun? Because before he was preparing them,
It was a drill, wasn't it?
I thought it was a
but
drill.
why? What was the point in that?
I don't know. I didn't linger on it, but I assumed it was something to do with a necessary thing to wake them up or something. Like they're in some kind of stasis. So
Maybe.
That's what I thought. He was trying to wake them up by putting them through pain, which on one hand I really like, because I know I can't remember the name of the character really, because when they kind of said all their names, a lot was going on, so I didn't really take them in. But the sort of main woman of the human resistance group, she saves
Ravio.
as he's doing. Yeah, she says as she's doing that, we have a Cyberman on board who like makes other Cybermen scream, and I really liked that because it really adds to the sort of feel that Ashard is like this really menacing character.
It's really cool, but I will concede to Will's point that it doesn't explain what that is.
Yeah, oh no,
and
no,
it
no.
really
I completely agree. It's nice in character building, but it makes no sense in the scheme of. But why is he doing it exactly?
It also kind of ruins a moment later for me as well, because when he opens the thing and they're kind of hiding inside the cyber suits, I was like, well, they're really lucky he didn't just start drilling their chest.
Yes, I made that almost like that specific note of why can he not? He's shown in Ascension that he can clearly detect when there's human life signs. So why does he not just do that when they're in the Cyberman suits?
I don't know.
I like that scene though. It's very intense.
Oh yeah, very. We'll get there, I'm sure. But I also said
we'll have to wrap this up soon because we've talked about one episode when we're going to go on to the second. But,
okay. I'll blast through.
We are 1 hour 40 minutes after editing into this, and that was how long the other episodes were. So we're gonna have to move on.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. We can talk about the episode.
But do you want to run long, or do you want to just leave it and we can maybe do a catch-up podcast for Timeless Children, or what?
Well, I think we should just carry on because I've only got 2 more bullet points for this episode.
Yeah, cool. I'll blast through mine really quickly, and then you guys can jump in, and I'll let you guys go if you don't mind. I put that the director clearly. Yeah, the director clearly likes the Cyber Warrior design too, because he does the cliched reveal of like a sexy woman where it goes from the feet gradually up the body to the head, and I'm like, why is the director telling me this Cyberman's sexy? It's really weird. But I also love the Cyber Warrior design. I liked that there was a kind of what I saw as a reference to Tomb of the Cybermen with the way that the images on the video screen were stacked up. I made a note that when Brendan is getting his mind wiped in the island scenes, there's a lot of TARDIS imagery that I picked up on, which then gets made explicit, and I didn't feel as clever. The Cybermen awakening and marching is really awesome. And the last note I had was, surprise, it's the Master. And I wanted to make a note of the fact that they tried to keep it a surprise by doing that old thing of having a character called Fack Out, which was close to Fake Out, and having Barack Stemis as the credited actor, which was an anagram for Master is Back, and the fact that the entirety of Twitter worked that out. So...
You pretty much covered everything I had there. I think I mentioned in the messages, like I also put I really liked the shot of the Cybermen emerging from the pods. I thought that was really well done. But I also had a note of the cliffhanger was extremely predictable.
Well,
I didn't really feel much tension there because I didn't really feel much tension in the cliffhanger because it was like, oh, it's the Master. There's no surprise there. So I didn't really feel.
I wasn't let down, but it wasn't. It wasn't a shock.
Like
it was more just like
cool. Surprise, but yeah, I think the scene that happened before, like, I know you guys aren't a fan of the subplot, but when Brendan was getting the award, and then he was kidnapped by his supposed adoptive father and his.
He wasn't kidnapped. He went voluntarily.
No, he said, well, kind of, but it was an odd scene because he didn't speak at all. But whatever. Before that scene, it was very slow paced, and then when we were actually coming to the end of the episode, this sparked what came after. It was the intensity, and when he was actually getting electrocuted or supposedly electrocuted in the hat, then we got the Cybermen breaking into the room, shooting as the music ramps up, and then we've also got the reveal of the Master. And I think all the scenes combined, building up the intensity for the final 5 minutes again, and then boom, we got the Master back. I thought it was brilliantly edited and directed.
That's fair enough. I can't disagree. Just quickly, do we want to give our score for that one episode first, then, and then go to or just do it at the end?
I was thinking we should give our summary of that episode and then provide a rating of it. So, Andrew, do you want to go first?
Okay, so I think it's a very good build-up episode for the finale. There are moments where it is very flat and not much is happening, mainly on the cyber carrier. A lot of the sort of dialogue and interactions in the transition between leaving the planet and entering the cyber carrier are probably the weaker moments of the episode, which do kind of drag it down for me. And the island stuff is very jarring pace-wise. But overall, I think it's a pretty damn good episode, so I give it an 8 overall.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I was more or less on the same page. I didn't have a lot of notes, but I just put the. I was torn between 7 and 8 the entire way through, but in the end, I went with 7 because the island scenes just drag it too far down as an overall episode. So 7 out of 10.
No additional summary for that?
No, that was all I had.
Okay, I'll give my summary then quickly. There are plenty of positives, but the negatives, like you said, unfortunately bring this episode down. Only slightly, though. About 15 of this 50-minute episode is very good, with the other 35 minutes being very uninspired and filler, in my opinion. Therefore, I'd give this episode a 6 out of 10. So we got an 8, a 7, and a 6.
Well, the average is easy to work out then, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the average score is going to be 7.
Well, no, because we have to take into consideration second episode as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm in for that one episode, though, yeah.
Right, to form one big score.
I think
Yeah.
overall, I'd agree with an overall 7 on that one. I tried to focus more on the positives, but I can also agree with both of the things with all the things that you guys said. So I think 7's a respectful middle ground.
Yeah, well, guys, that is not the end, because we've got a whole another episode to review, and this must be so annoying for the people listening. Like, wow, they must be right at the end of the episode now. No, here's another one.
This is going to be a 3-hour podcast, isn't it?
I
reckon
apologise.
this is no worries. I reckon this will come out to about 2.5 hours.
If
Which
that's the
is-
case, then we've got about 35 minutes to break down the most controversial episode of Doctor Who ever and give a brief sort of ending news section.
I think we should give 20 minutes to this section. Just let's
Okay,
fly through
I'll-
it, because I think we're going to talk about the ending more than the actual episode itself. I've got that
Mm-hmm.
feeling. So, however you guys want to go into this one, I'm all ears.
I can just start going down my notes if you want, because I made quite a few.
Yeah,
but I
let's go
can
down
put
the
out all
notes.
the necessary
Cool.
ones.
I'll
the
chime in
first
and then
one-
go over anything you haven't
Yeah,
covered.
okay. Yeah, cool. So my first note was, I think Sasha and Jodie's chemistry is pretty much amazing from the start.
Agreed,
Yeah,
and I made the same
agreed.
note.
I really, even from the get-go, I think the two of them together just work really well. Basically the same sort of thing that happened with Capaldi and Michelle Gomez. I think they also had amazing chemistry from the start. So yeah, I love the pairing of them together. I did put a question though of how exactly did the Master destroy Gallifrey?
Good question.
Because that's never really addressed, and I'm a bit. It's never explained how he did that, and I'm like, okay, so how did you do this?
Well, I mean, I assume they never really explained things. I assumed it was just like he went around and massacred them all. But at the same time, it also doesn't explain how he escaped the Kasavan. I mean, you literally
Yeah,
had a
exactly.
line. You had a line in Spyfall 2 where the Doctor basically says, "Oh, he'll get out, I'm sure," and then it just doesn't even address the fact he's just there.
Which, to be fair, isn't too negative because. At the
Oh,
end
it's
of the
very
day-
Doctor Who. I mean, the Master
Yeah,
dies in like 1,000 episodes. Well, at least 5 or 6 episodes of Classic Who.
Moffat even made a joke about it because when
Yes.
he brought Missy back after Death in Heaven, it was like, oh no, she'll be back because she's always bloody back. And
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of like that there was a joke about that. I really liked the scene between Graham and Yaz on the
Yes.
the ship when they're planning to get inside of the Cyberman suits. The only niggle I had about it, because I think the scene it's beautifully written and very well acted.
Agreed.
The only sort of negative I had about that scene is, why would he say that Yaz is the best person he's ever met when he had Grace for so long? Like, I kind of feel like
it felt odd. Yeah, I agree.
Oh no, I
Yeah.
disagree. I like that. I'm not having any criticism of that scene because I've said that one scene is 10 out of 10. So.
I
No,
agree.
the
It's
scene
a
is
gorgeous
good, but
scene.
the scene is very good, but why did he choose Yaz?
Because Yaz is great.
Yaz is great. And
So she wouldn't choose Ryan, Grace, or the Doctor. She
Well,
chose
no,
Yaz.
he specifically says that he's essentially saying that she's better than the Doctor, which I could have been offended by, but really wasn't, because it even he says like, Ryan said the Doctor was the greatest woman he'd ever met, but I actually think you are. I think you're fantastic because of everything you've done. And I think if you watch Yaz's arc and then you have that moment in comparison with, or in conjunction with Can You Hear Me, and you know that everything she sort of has gone through and everything she faces daily, and the fact that she's then still able to kind of take command and keep positive and
point.
everything.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I loved all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say just overall, because I think I did make a note about this later on. I think this series 12 as a whole, but especially this finale two-parter, really does a lot for Yaz for me. It really cemented Yaz's position as my favorite of the trio.
Yeah, and again, I think that's an example, a rare example, sometimes of Chibnall doing good writing, because he doesn't beat you over the head with Yaz is overcoming something in these scenes. But if you've seen Can You Hear Me, then you know it. And I appreciate that he doesn't sort of have, Yaz going, "We're gonna get through it, aren't we, Graham?" And then has her go to one side with Graham and go, "Oh, Graham, I'm so depressed, really. I can't face this." But I'll give it a good go. So I loved the fact that it always seemed like she was giving it her all, and I think that comes to a head in the scene at the end where she just doesn't want to let the Doctor sort of sacrifice her life.
Yeah.
And again, it ruins that scene that she's given that such emotion that her entire arc has bubbled up to this one moment, and it's culminated by Ryan going, "Yes, come on."
Yeah, exactly.
What?
I then went on to we've already mentioned this, but why couldn't Ashad detect them inside of that armor? That was a bit of a nibble for me. However, I did note that I thought Bradley and especially Mandip did really, really great performances in that scene. Like the way that you just see the tear roll down Yaz's face when Ashad's right there. I really liked that. That was really.
I've got to shout out when it's when writing is really good as well, and I've said, I love the line. It's the line of the episode, "Mate, I'm from Yorkshire." That's a love letter. That is my.
I like that.
That's the line of the episode, possibly the line of the Chibnall era. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, coming from Yorkshire, it's true.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
very
from Oop
true.
North anyway, and I know the feeling being from Oop North and having a lot of friends in like Leeds and Sheffield and that area. So.
The next significant note I put was it was nice to see a somewhat return of Ryan's dyspraxia in the scene where he throws that bomb.
Yeah.
It was nice to have a little bit of a payoff for that.
That's a parallel to Spyfall as well, when he couldn't with the basketball. Because
I was just going to say it telegraphs that too much, because why would he? I didn't need to hear him go, "Oh yeah, through the hoop." Like, no, you're not on a basketball court. We get it.
I know.
That's literally. I added that to the note. I thought it's nice to see Ryan's dyspraxia come back and have a conclusion, but I then also added it's shame that he ruins it a moment later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By being Ryan.
But I think the direction of the actual Cybermen exploding, I think it was very good. I love the direction in this episode. I think it's great. But like you said, the return of dyspraxia, I love how they portrayed it. I think it was very good. What's the word? Representation of the actual condition, because I saw a tweet about it, and it was like a mother, and she was overwhelmingly happy that it actually got recognition. And I think 3 episodes mentioning it isn't overbearing, isn't underdoing it either. So I think I don't mind it. I thought, yeah, why not?
No, I thought it was nice that they sort of tied off that bit of Ryan's arc. I just wish he hadn't have ruined it by them being Ryan.
I agree. No, I agree with both of you that there's a bad acting choice at the end, but I love that moment, and it's I completely see where you're coming from with people that have dyspraxia liking being seen in that way, because without getting too deep, I have suffered from anxiety and depression, and I think that's why I latched onto Yaz, especially after watching Can You Hear Me, and why that's my favourite episode of Series 12.
Because I can see that.
It's representation, and it's the fact that, things can be tough, but you get through it day to day, and when you view the character through that lens, I think it adds something to them. And it's the same with Ryan. As much as Tosin isn't a great actor, anytime he gets a heroic moment like that, you're seeing it through the lens of, he's had a small victory, which kind of relates to something we said in episode 3, but we'll get to that next week.
My next note was I really like the scene between the Master and Ashad. I think they're both very imposing for different reasons. Because like the Master's acting small in comparison to Ashad, but you also know that he's absolutely mental. So it's like quite sinister on both sides.
He nailed his performance.
Sasha is phenomenal in the role.
I think
I'll jump in here and say that was a note that. I don't agree. But either way, Either way, I've said that I've just made a note under Sasha. I've said that I was trying to make a note of how he plays the Master, and I couldn't because I've put he shows insanity, anger, joyful relish, tragic nihilism, self-hatred, self-love, and more. You cannot get a handle on this person, and I think that's deliberate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really enjoy his performance. In Spyfall as well, I thought he was brilliant in the role,
He was
so I
great
think it's
in
a
Spyfall.
phenomenal casting choice.
I really want to see him again. More often. As often as we saw Michelle Gomez, I'd love him to stick around.
Yeah,
Completely, I agree.
I'd love him to stick around. I'm glad Michelle Gomez stuck around because I love her portrayal as well
Oh,
for
yeah.
I don't
different
think
reasons.
I've disliked any of the Masters. Yeah.
No.
The next one I took was I think the time lapse of the Citadel being built is stunning.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't note that, but okay, cool.
Just that scene when they're doing all the backstory stuff and he details how they, once they sort of mastered the genetic splicing and the regeneration, they go on to build all the citadels and stuff. I thought that just was a gorgeous visual
Haha,
of the
mastered.
citadel being built bit by bit. I really liked that.
Mm.
I literally put a note saying this is where the issues start.
Oh
Yeah.
dear.
Because and I summed it up later on, but basically, as a concept, I do not dislike the arc of the Timeless Child. I do not dislike the idea or the fundamentals behind it. The thing I dislike is that it's the Doctor, and not even just because of the whole oh well, it means that Will Hartnell's not the first. That doesn't bother me because I'm pretty sure it's even mentioned in one of the early classics. He sort of offhandedly says that he's regenerated before or something. I think it was in City of the Daleks or something.
There's a few moments like that, yeah.
Yeah, I know Moffat's mentioned it in an interview before, but the idea that there are doctors outside of the ones that we know before Hartnell, all that stuff, none of that bothers me. I think that's fine. The bit that bothers me is the fact that this arc of having the Doctor be the Timeless Child completely takes away one of the things that I loved about the character is that they weren't anything special. The idea that
I disagree with that. I see where you're coming from, and I can see why you might gravitate to the character like that. But I specifically made a note that this is entirely on brand. If you've watched any of the Seventh Doctor era, this is exactly that. They constantly hint to the fact that the Doctor is somehow other or somehow more than just a Time Lord. And I don't love... Not in your case, I'm not attacking you, but I don't know people that are like, oh, the Doctor being something other than a Time Lord comes out of nowhere. It absolutely doesn't. It's been seeded in for decades now.
I don't necessarily mean... It's literally just... I've always liked the idea that the Doctor was a Time Lord who just didn't like the way that their society worked and just wanted to go and travel, and I really liked that, and I sort of gravitated to that. So the fact that they've kind of changed that and gone, oh no, they're the foundation of the whole Time Lord race, kind of bugs me a little bit, but it's not my main niggle. My main niggle with this arc... So my main niggle with the whole Timeless Child thing is that, at least for me personally, you two might disagree, I think it would have worked better if it was the Master.
I agree.
Strong disagree.
Oh, well. I agree.
Because I think it kind of makes sense why the Master would hate the Doctor, is because he mentions, how do you think I feel knowing that you're the reason I exist? And
That wouldn't make
makes
sense if it was the Master, though.
But I love the idea that if it was the Master, he'd hate the fact that the Time Lords then, the Gallifreyans, just did all of these experiments on him and just took this ability that he had, just took it for themselves. And built their entire sort of civilization around him and this one part of his genetics.
I think he would absolutely love that. I think that's... respectfully, I think that's a misunderstanding of the two characters, because I think the Master's response to that would be that he absolutely loved it. He loved all the experimentation. He loved that he was special. He loved that he was in every Time Lord. But for the Doctor, it is deliberately something that he thinks would break her, and you can understand that. If that reveal was the Master, I think it would be a complete damn squib, because he would just be like, "And I've just found out I'm great." So screw all of you, you know.
Okay, fair enough. I can kind of agree with that. I can see where you're coming from.
But yeah, I don't
So-
think the timeless child stuff takes away from anything. Was my personal note about that. I think it's a fantastic development of everything from the Morbius Doctors to the Cartmel Master Plan to even things that are being explored in Time Lord Victorious, like the line about "we are immortal, barring accidents." You know, I think it's a really cool development of that. But I do appreciate, and I wish they'd explained further, that it doesn't detract from Hartnell being the first Doctor and from that childhood that we all know of, because it is specifically a second life. It isn't just a regeneration, it's a regression literally back to starting again from childhood.
Yeah, the Master even mentions that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember which part it is, but he even says to her, oh no, that was it, because she mentions, but I was with you, we were at the Citadel together, all that stuff, and he says, yeah, but that was just a different life, so at least that is mentioned.
Yeah, he says it wasn't your first life, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think my main opinion of this whole arc is basically going to hinge on what he does with it next.
Oh yeah,
Because it feels very unfinished and like there's more to it. I don't think I'll ever be able to give like a full definitive I like this arc or I don't like this arc until the next season or whenever he chooses to actually wrap it all up. I think that'll be when I'll finally be able to agree.
I think you may be disappointed because I can't see him necessarily doing that. I think he thinks he's given enough explanation now, which worries
But
me.
the biggest disappointment.
Yeah,
for
if that
me is how
happens,
the
I'm going to be
Doctor
very
is-
annoyed.
The Doctor's not Gallifreyan anymore, because technically she was just found on some random planet, and she came from a different dimension, so she wasn't even from the same realm as Gallifrey.
I would counter that and say that we never knew the Doctor was Gallifreyan. In fact, the Doctor is referred to several times in the first or second Doctor's era as being explicitly human and as only having one heart. So that's always been kind of an iffy thing. But more importantly, one thing that I took away from the episode is it still says that the Doctor isn't necessarily not Gallifreyan. That's the beauty that I like about the fact that it's just someone discovered on a portal. Who's to say that's not a portal through time? And that she is a Gallifreyan from like an alternative future or something. We don't know that. That's why I don't want that explained. I don't want it to be, you know, it's another time, another dimension, another reality. She could be a Gallifreyan from a parallel Pete's World type reality for all we know. There's nothing to say she is, but there's also nothing to explicitly say she isn't. So
Yeah, I can pretty much agree with the things you're saying there. Like I said, I don't dislike the arc at all. I think it's a very interesting and different way to take the character, and I do appreciate the fact that Chibnall was bold enough to go, you know, I'm just going to do this. I just think it all sort of, for me, hinges on where he ends up going with it. And if he doesn't really touch on it again, I'm going to be a little bit annoyed because it kind of feels like he's just sort of left it half-baked almost. Especially with, because I know most people maybe don't really care about knowing. I want to know where Ruth fits into it all.
yes, I made a note of that and said that that's one of my biggest peeves is that I was expecting that explained this season. And I just know it's annoying that we don't get that.
5-year plan.
I hate all that though. I don't just explain things. It's part of the reason I don't like Fugitive of the Jadoon is that I hate when you're stretching something out like that and you're like, "Ooh, audience, you'll find out," and it's like, just give me the answers.
I don't mind if it's something being stretched out over a season. Like
Yes, exactly.
One thing I enjoyed about Moffat's tenure is the fact that he always, obviously, we didn't get every single answer about where the cracks came from in Series 5, but at least we knew it was going somewhere, and we at least got some answers about what was going on. Whereas in this, we just got basically a bunch of new questions, kind of in a way. And the one line that really bugged me about all of this, and I think you might agree with this just from what you've said, is when the Doctor literally asks Ruth, you know, what this all means or where this all fits in, and Ruth just says, like, would the answers really help you? And I was like, yes, please tell us.
I don't mind that because I get the thematic point in that the Doctor's having to deal with a lot, and I think that's more of a speaking to, have you ever been sort of burdened by who you were before? And I love that concept.
I like that line. I like that line a lot. It was more just the fact that it was... Maybe I'm wrong, but to me it almost felt like Chibnall saying through Ruth, do you really need the answers to this?
I don't agree. I think if I remember the line right, and I think I do because I've got it memorized, she doesn't really say that so much as the doctor, as in Jodie, says, so where do you fit in? Are you another one of these previous doctors that I had my mind wiped of? And Joe Martin, as the doctor's response is, don't ask me, love, I'm just in your head. Which I thought is like, yeah, why would you ask your own stuff? I mean, I know they're the same person and everything and whatever else, but asking your own imaginary sort of construct of this person who they are isn't going to give you that answer because she's not literally there. And I assume we'll get that answer if we see the character properly.
I really hope we do see her again.
But I also think for me, it's kind of upsetting and kind of sad that the imaginary version of the fugitive doctor inside Jodie's head is better than the real version that we see in Fugitive.
Yeah, I hope she comes back, and I hope we get some form of just some answers would be nice.
Yes, definitely.
The next note I did have was we kind of touched on it, but the fact that Ashad's death is really anticlimactic.
Yep, I read the exact same note.
Which is a massive shame because his character and the build-up for his character, I think, was actually phenomenally done.
Yep. I said that it's a criticism of the episode as a whole as well because I think it does the exact same thing with the Cybermen. It builds up, there's an army of hundreds of thousands, and then they're defeated like that. It's kind of like, oh, and then we've got these explosives, they're done. And it's like,
exactly, and
what?
it kind of bugs me that for the... I mean, I guess it is the third time, but I think World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls kind of did put more emphasis on the Cybermen as a threat. But it kind of bugs me that for the third time in, 5 seasons, we've had a finale where it's the Master and the Cybermen, where the Cybermen are... Yeah, and where the Cybermen are just like the second fiddle once again.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Master just disposes of them like that, and it's like, oh great, so all this interesting build that we had around these cyber wars and Ashad's character just wiped out.
I was just going to say, I think I'd be more fine with that if they hadn't spent the previous episode building up that the Cybermen were a big threat, and then, like you said, this episode happens, and it's almost like Chibnall going, I've got to deal with these other things, the Master and the Timeless Children, so forget about that.
It kind of undermines the first part. It basically makes the first part, this is a bit of an extreme way to put it, but it kind of makes it feel like the first part didn't need to happen.
Yeah, it does make it a bit redundant. I completely agree with that.
Which is sad because I really enjoyed the first part.
I prefer the first part to the second.
I don't, but I have my reasons.
Okay.
What did I put? I'm trying to look for my next
the reason why I'm being
major
really quiet is I don't have much to say about this one. I have literally nothing else to add on to what you're saying because I think Andrew is literally covering everything so well. Keep going, mate. Keep going.
I did put a question of I really hope we'll learn more about this division because they kind of like hint that this is a big thing, and then as we start to get that information, it all just completely shuts off.
I think that's supposed to be, I believe, the Celestial Intervention Agency, though, and I think that's kind of, it's not made explicit, but it's there, but I think that's a deliberate choice, and I think that's Chibnall trying to be clever again, because it's like, the Doctor had lots of adventures with the Division, but you can catch them on Big Finish. They're not going to be explained here.
That's going to bug me if that's what he does. Yeah. If that is what he does, it's going to just bug the hell out of me.
That was what I thought, yeah.
And then I did make a note because even after watching it again all in one go yesterday, I was still a bit confused. Is the island stuff is this one of the lives that we didn't see, or is the island stuff the memories that are put into the Doctor's head to hide all the truth about?
I think it was to hide it, but it's interesting because you could canonize it technically, but I think what the Master was saying, it was a cover-up of what actually happened.
Okay, that's what I was erring on.
If I may, it does explain it and say that, yeah, it's a visual filter over the truth, and it's too subtle, but it's flashing to moments that we see played out as to their equivalent in those scenes. So it's literally the story that we're told of the Timeless Child and Texion finding them and everything, but given a visual filter of, like, this is just 19th century Ireland. So
Okay, that is what it was meant to be then.
yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Every event that happens is that event, but given a visual filter. But like I said, that's not super well explained. And more importantly, the note that I had was, it comes out of nowhere in the first episode, and then it's revealed in the second episode that the Master was sending those flashes to the Doctor to kind of pique her memory of, why am I remembering this island thing? But the Doctor never at any point stops and acknowledges that she's getting these memories. It's kind of like the audience are seeing it, and it's not explained within universe till it is. And I was like, that's never made clear. It should be made explicitly clear. Like, have the Doctor in part 1 stop and go like, oh, I'm just having the weirdest memory, and it's just like, have I been to Ireland or something? You know, just some kind of acknowledgement that she's getting a flash of memory from the Master, instead of just, hey, audience,
exactly.
that thing you saw, it was the Master doing it. What?
Yeah, that bugged me. I think I made a note of that a little bit later on. But yeah, just overall, I think as kind of interesting as the island stuff was, I don't think it really pays off that well, because especially now that you've mentioned the whole thing of the fact that it doesn't even completely parallel the Timeless Child stuff. Now that you've mentioned that as well, now that you've mentioned that, it's bugging me even more.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it was clearly Tribnall trying to be clever and do like, oh, what's this? You'll find out later, and then, oh, look at me, I've done a thing where it's a parallel to the story I was trying to tell. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't even line up properly.
Yep.
So yeah,
100%.
that's just bugging me more now.
Yeah.
What else I put? Oh yeah, this might be a bit divisive. I put that I thought the Cyberlords were quite an interesting idea. I actually didn't mind the design, but I don't like the fact that pretty much nothing is done with them, so they don't really serve a purpose.
I think that's deliberate. They clearly escape, and we're going to see them again. That's just my 2 cents.
So. If that's what happens, then fair enough to Chibnall. I'm glad you've set that up now.
Yeah.
But again, just going off of what we have so far, the fact that they didn't really seem to do anything just kind of bugged me. But again, if that comes back later on, then I'll be more than happy to, take that point back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's deliberate because there's a lot going on in the episodes, and I think that's more to set up that they're a threat coming back later. And I did make a note of saying, the first time I watched and every time since, that it's deliberate that when the death particle's going off, you quite explicitly hear the Master saying, quickly in here, you lot! And it's clearly they're stealing a TARDIS and going somewhere. So we'll see them again.
Yeah, I'm assuming we will. What else did I put? Oh, I just made a note of the fact that I really like the fact that, before Graham or whoever it is mentions, or it might be Kush Sharmas, before he even finishes saying about stepping through the portal, we see Yaz is already going. Like, I really liked that. I like that a lot.
That was funny, yeah.
I really, really like Yaz in these episodes, guys.
Yeah,
I
okay.
like Minded Girl. She's grown on me over time.
Yeah, I think in Series 11, Graham was kind of the better of the three, but in Series 12, Yaz has definitely sort of come forward as the best one.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
What did I put there?
Will, that's 20 minutes, by the way. Will, just to give you a shout.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm not attacking you at all.
I'll just whiz through the last few I've got. I really like the sequence of 13 breaking the Matrix. I thought that was a nice callback with nice little nostalgic bits.
I found that more effective the first time. Because I remember at the time watching it, I was like, oh, so thrilled, and it's a fanboy moment and punch in the air. And then I watched it on this rewatch, and I was like, this is actually quite flat when you know what's happening, isn't it?
True, but I still think it works quite nicely. Okay. We've already touched on it, but I made a note of the fact that I just hate the fact that Ryan doesn't even react to the Doctor saying she's going to blow herself up.
Yaz, come on.
He just stands there and does nothing, and then stops Yaz when she's quite visibly getting really upset.
Yeah.
I liked the acting between Jodie and Sasha in the Matrix room scene, where he's sort of like goading her to blow them up. I really liked that. Yes,
I've made a note of. I actually compared that to maybe this is me being pretentious and geeky, but The Dark Knight. I think that's the Batman and the Joker scene. It's the Doctor Who equivalent. Like, I want to drag you down to this level, so you're gonna have to kill me. And I always love. I'm a sucker for that conflict, and so I made a note of that, and so I thought that was great.
That's an interesting parallel. I hadn't thought of that before. I quite like that.
It's almost the exact scene. The scene of it's at the end of The Dark Knight, I think, when he's like, you're gonna have to either kill me or sacrifice other lives or something. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it seemed to me like, wow, this is almost the same scene. So yeah.
I don't know if this is going to be a controversial point. And to be fair, I don't like this, but at the same time, I also can't see another way they would have done it. So I think it's maybe just in the writing more than anything. I hate the cop out of Koshamas coming in and just blowing himself up with instead. I think I
agree.
would have preferred it if we'd have had more time with the character.
It's predictable. It's predictable.
If we'd have had more time to get to know the character, I would have probably liked it more and felt a little bit more like, oh no, don't do that. But the fact is, we don't really get that much time with him. So when he does do it, I'm just like, oh, all right, okay.
And the thing is, it's meant to be such a thrilling scene. Yeah, it kind of takes out the intensity because they talk about it for too long. Because in that time, why didn't the master just yank the
Leave.
thing? Because he knows what was going to happen. He knows the doctor wouldn't do it, but he knows this guy did, and he made no attempt to stop him from getting the trigger. And he just watched. He was like,
I don't know.
have your
That
moment.
that whole interaction just bothered me
It's-
personally, and I'm not just saying this because I don't like the character. I think this would have worked well, maybe not necessarily with Ryan, but I honestly think it would have worked better if they'd have had one of the companions do it, and then we'd have had actually some form of emotional payoff.
I
Do you know what's
agree.
weird is that I think even because she's, I don't want to say that the actor. I wish I could. Ian McElhinney, the actor. I don't want to say he's a bad actor. He's great in Game of Thrones and he's great throughout most of this. But I just didn't find his acting that great in this scene. And I want to say that if it was Julie Graham, if it was Ravio, I think that scene would again be better because for whatever reason we seem to have connected more with her and because
Yeah,
of her
I
flirt.
really liked her.
Yeah, because of her flirting with Graham and everything, I think like that would have way more impact
Maybe,
if it
yeah.
was
But
that character.
I think it falls flat because they talk for too long about it. If it was more
Yeah.
heroic, if it was shorter, and then it just happened, boom, that's great.
I
I
agree
also
with
really like
every-
the fact that you. Sorry, I was just gonna say I really like the fact that you also noted that she was flirting with Graham because one of my earlier points in I think Ascension was, is she flirting with Graham? Question mark.
Oh,
She
completely,
was.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to say I agree with everything you're saying about that scene, but I also don't know. I'm not a writer, but I don't know if how I would have written out the conclusion to that any differently. And I forgive the scene a lot because of the line, "You have to go. The universe still needs you, Doctor." And I did think it was a very brief, good acting moment when I was like, the Doctor's not surely just going to accept this and walk away. And when he kind of turns and says, "After the universe needs you," he says, "Run, Doctor," and I got the sense of like, oh, you better run, because he's doing this whether you go or not. So it seemed less
Yeah,
like, oh, I'll just abandon you then, that's fine. But
Yeah, I think the scene overall would have worked way better if it had if we'd have either had more time with the character or if it had been a different one who we had more time with.
I completely agree. Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it just kind of left it on a bit of a weird note for me. And then the last note I made was, I quite like the cliffhanger with the Jadoon. I think that's quite fun.
I love it. I love the callback. The what? Because Tennant's my favorite Doctor, and it's a Tennant thing, and I love it.
How they got into the pod is very concerning though, because it's meant to be impenetrable, but then they just got in.
That happens
well-
many a time, though. To be fair, doesn't it?
Not
we
really.
can. I can call out times that happened, even just in this era. The Kablam man.
Yeah, I was
Yep.
thinking about that.
The Titanic. I mean, I know they do say, "Remember to put your shields up," and the Doctor doesn't. But who's to say that that Jodie has the shields up? So it has happened. I mean, the Titanic crashed directly into the TARDIS wall. But if that's a nitpick I have with all 50 odd years of Doctor Who, is that, you know, is the TARDIS in a state of temporal grace, or is it a clever lie? Can the assembled hordes of Genghis Khan not break through the TARDIS door, or can anybody just come in? You know, it never sets it. It's just literally what the story requires.
There are some nitpicks that I just think have to be let go with the show because it's so big and there's so much continuity. Like the whole the TARDIS can't do wood thing. Like it can't, but then sometimes it can.
Sonic.
So you know.
Yeah.
That I meant the Sonic. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, because the show's been going
Just
on.
saving
for
you the
so long,
comments.
there's so much of it. Yeah. Because the show's been going on for so long and there's so much continuity, it's just kind of like,
Agreed.
yeah, you're gonna get a couple of little continuity parts that just keep messing up. So I didn't find that bit too bad.
No,
Cool.
it had to be.
Any other thoughts anyone wants to add?
I have literally no thoughts. You've nailed it. Mike, do you have anything?
I do, but in the interest of not being here all day, I think I'll I'll maybe make a post for social media or something with some of my other notes because we'd be here forever.
Just run through it. As long as you don't have many, you may as well just.
No,
run
I
through
don't
it.
have many, and I can run through them, and they're like 1 or 2 sentence stuff, unless you guys want to chip in. I love all of the really geeky Doctor Who references: tissue compression eliminator, the Citadel references to the deadly assassin, all that kind of thing. The Cybermen effect music in the very first scene of Timeless Children is great. I love how frantic the scenes are. There's a sense of like actual war and of them being picked off like in a slasher movie, so I thought that was a good scene. I thought Jodie was brilliant at showing desperation when the Master traps her and she has to appeal for her friends' lives. I thought that was a very well acted scene. I thought, again, this is because I'm a film student and I always see other films and things. In the scene where they're hiding in the Cyberman suits and Ashad opens the door, it's the exact scene from the very first 1978 Halloween when Jamie Lee Curtis is hiding in the closet. Right from the point of view of the eye too.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's the same scene. The director clearly did that on purpose. I know it's a horror movie type cliche, but yeah. I like that we still technically don't know where the Doctor is from, their species, their real name, or anything. I think people that say that it explained everything about the character aren't paying attention, because it doesn't. My one issue, which is a question for you guys that you may know more than me, doesn't this idea of where regeneration came from contradict River Song as a character? Because isn't it explicitly said that she gets the ability to regenerate because she was conceived in the time vortex, and it's from the vortex? But
Yes, yes, it does.
It does.
that now doesn't make any sense. That's just proved that a lie. So, yeah, slight issue there.
I actually did make a note in that on my overall section because I thought of it a bit later on. But yeah, I don't like that this opens up certain plot holes in already established canon. But
Yeah.
oh well.
It just
I'll
sounds
live
like
with
what
it.
Moffat did, because Moffat,
Yeah.
Arrow, literally resurrected the planet of Gallifrey 2 seasons in. It's destroyed again. I think, wow, that was a bit of a waste.
I think the modern show can't really deal with Gallifrey and the Time Lords though, so I don't mind it as much as long as it's not a constant thing. Like, it's done now and it's destroyed. I'd have an issue if it somehow comes back and the Time Lords are all fine again now. Because I also made a note later that I love the scene that it was very reminiscent of the Time War. When the Doctor has the death particle, the Master's like, can you actually do it this time? Can you end all organic life? Can you completely destroy Gallifrey? And the Doctor herself is like, yes, this time I can, I have to. I mean, I know they ultimately don't, but that parallel was quite clever, I thought. I thought that the idea of Ashad's plan I found completely stupid and very badly written. Because if the Cyber Warriors have been purged of all organic components, then they aren't Cybermen. They're just robots. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the Master specifically calls
The
out how
confrontation,
shit...
yeah, the confrontation between the two was great.
Yeah, I get that the Master literally calls out how crap robots are, but the very idea of Ashad saying, I'm going to make all of us into a robot, that's a dumb statement. That's a fundamental misunderstanding by the writer of what a robot and a cyborg is. That's Chris Chibnall not understanding that terminology. You can't turn yourself into a robot.
I think it may be because of what I mentioned earlier, of the self-hatred. He doesn't like it, so he wanted to eradicate every human bit of him to make it.
I
into
get
robots.
I get that, but you can't do that because then you're not you. I mean, there's always going to be, even if it's the RTD type idea that it's a human brain, then you're still a cyborg. You can't turn yourself into a robot because those are two completely incompatible things. That's like me walking outside and saying, I'm going to turn every human into a drop of rain. You can't do, they're not the same thing. They're fundamentally different, and it's a pet peeve of mine because I'm a huge sci-fi geek, as I've made clear, and because I know what the difference is between a robot, an android, and a cyborg, and it bugs me no end that Chibnall seemingly doesn't. Because you can turn yourself into a cyborg, that's fine, but you can't turn yourself into a robot. That's not what you'd be.
I personally, I didn't read into it that much because I think it didn't actually evolve into anything, and I think if it's not touched upon again, it's not a problem.
It just bugs me on a geek level.
It's throwaway. It's a throwaway line.
It bugs me, but purely in the sense that it once again undermines this character that, for the most part, I thought was really well written and built up.
It bugs me more because there's 1 or 2 lines that could explain it away better. Like instead of having him say, I'm going to turn into a robot, which is a ridiculous statement, just have him say, I'm going to purge all emotion. which makes way more sense, and that is the Cybermen's kind of modus operandi. But you don't need to say you've purged everything completely, because by saying you've purged all organic components, that includes the brain, which means you're no longer you. You don't exist anymore, you know? Just create a robot if that's what you want to do. It's not going to be you, though. You know? But anyway, I said that I don't know if you guys know that the script is available online, and it specifically points out that the scene of Tecteon with two other people are supposed to be Tecteon, Rassilon, and Omega, with the Foundation of Time Lord sort of the whole purpose of where they're from. And I like that even though it tries to explain regeneration, that it still keeps to the idea that it was Omega who discovered time travel, and it's a different thing, even though those two were linked by Moffat, which now we have to kind of ignore. I like the idea that this idea of the Doctor as the other is a perfect continuation or conclusion to the Cartmel master plan from the Sylvester McCoy era. And I've just put the note, is this too much explanation or is there enough mystery left? I personally lean toward the latter, but I'd be interested to hear you two guys' thoughts.
Should we wrap it up with a summary? Should we go to summaries now? And
well, I've got other things. I was just really... yeah. Do you want me to do that now, or...?
I was just going to say, so when you say is there enough explanation, do you mean for the whole arc as a whole?
No, I said, is there too much explanation of the Doctor and where all these things are from, or do you think there's still enough mystery left?
No,
it doesn't really bother me that much. I quite like that we've now got this sort of new backstory and this new information. I just, like I said earlier, I just hope he doesn't just leave it here, and that we do get some information about where all these other incarnations now fit in, and how this all interacts with her timeline.
It's opened up some questions, but I wouldn't say it opens up more questions than why it answers. I think I think that's more. And
that's why I like it. I think it answers bits, but not that much. I think there's still enough mystery left, but go ahead.
Well, I think like the Doctor not being in from the same realm of the Gallifreya, supposedly, let's just say hypothetically, we now know how the Time Lords were made, how they were formed, how the Doctor was formed, and how... Because the thing is, you were on about it earlier, the mystery of who the Doctor was before the first Doctor, that's gone now. Because now we know that there's multiple incarnations before, and while we don't know exactly where she's from and whatever, we do know the fundamentals of her character now. We understand how she regenerated for the first time, how there was experiments, how she got injected her regeneration energy into the Time Lords, how the Time Lords built up the city around her, and that's what I'm saying. There's less mystery than there was before.
I agree with everything until you said they didn't build up the city around her. I think that was showing you that there was always...
Not the city, but the actual
the Citadel.
Species.
I don't think that's the case. I think that's showing you that the things that we know that happened still happened, and I think that's why it shows you those three people, because it was always said that there were three founders of Time Lord Society, which were Rassilon, who did the building of the Citadel and the pompous Lord idea and everything, Omega, who discovered the sort of black holes and time travel, and the mysterious Other, who a lot of people thought was the Doctor, or especially in the Seventh Doctor's era, but now we know was Tecteon, because she was the one who discovered the secret of regeneration. So it gives a little bit more to that, but I don't think it takes anything hugely away, because everything that we thought happened still exists. It's literally just regeneration that they're explaining away, which, you know, fair enough, I guess, whether you like it or not, it's the case anyway, so... I've completely lost my train of thought, sorry. So, anyway, if you don't mind, I'll quickly blast through my notes. I've said that the mislead of the guys in Cybermen suits when I thought Ethan was dead was cool. It was clever. What exactly is the Cyberium? It's completely key, but it's never explained what it is. It's just this kind of like, it can create anything, don't worry about it kind of thing.
I think it's kind of mentioned in The Haunting of Villa Diodati that it's like this, essentially like a living database of all sort of like Cyberman knowledge and information, which is a cool idea. I just kind of wish they'd have either explained it a bit more or done more with it, because if this is meant to be like the foundation of like all Cybermen society, why have we only just heard about it?
Yeah, that's fair enough. I get where you're coming from. That makes a bit of sense. I have to make a quick reference that I like that the Cyber Masters are dressed for the occasion, because come on. I like the idea of regenerating Cybermen because for some reason it just seems really cool as a kind of grotesque idea. And
It's
then
based,
just
that idea kind of reminds me of a more successful version of Nightmare in Silver.
yeah, I'd go that. Yeah, I've just also said the self-sacrifice speech is a Doctor staple. It's just the Ninth Doctor and Rose all over again. I thought that two things I thought were beautiful: the old TARDIS, which always is, and the Doctor's line that you thought it would make me less, but it makes me more, which I actually agree with. But I also think that was Chibnall trying to scream at the audience that don't dislike this, it's cool, which I think there's a few lines like that as well.
I think Chibnall was was speaking to the audience through the characters, 100%.
Completely, yeah. Because it seems like he's apologising for this reveal a few times in a few lines, but yeah. And so quickly, I will give you my summary, if you don't mind.
And your rating at the end.
And a rating at the end, and then I'll jump to you guys. There's a lot to process. I love the Cybermen story. Sasha's great as the master, but everything's overshadowed by that big reveal, and that's a lot for one story. The whole thing comes together well enough, but still feels a bit disjointed. The timeless child stuff I go back and forth on almost daily. Was it necessary? Definitely not. Does it ruin anything? No, for me. Does it add anything? Kind of. Today I'm more on the side of it, but I could still live without it and not miss it. Still, it gives lots of nerdy discussion and reflection, which I like. The episode is well acted, the direction's great, the writing is probably somewhere in the middle overall, and the music is more bad than good. And so for part 2, I said you have to respect the ambition, and my rating changes constantly, but on this occasion I went with 8 out of 10.
So that brings your overall rating to 7.5, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that makes sense.
7.5, okay.
Oh no, well I rounded up and said overall for the 2 episodes 8 out of 10 because I don't like 0.5s. So
So you'd give it an 8 instead of a 7.5.
yeah, instead of going with that, I would round up and say I'll go with an 8 and give it the point higher for 2 parts together.
Okay, let's give it an
But
8.
that's just because I dislike seeing 0.5 of anything. So.
Yes. Okay.
So my overall thoughts on both, I sort of did a summary for both parts. I put overall a solid 2-part finale with mostly decent writing, and I did also make a note of saying at least this felt like a finale because Jesus Christ, the Battle of Ranskar-Kolos is trash.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Excellent
agreed.
point.
That is not a finale, so I'm very glad that Chibnall actually gave us a finale this time around that felt like a finale. I've already covered that. I did add that I don't mind the arc overall, but I just hope Chibnall gives us a bit more of it. I put... Have I already done that? I put overall exceptional performances by Jodie, Mandip, and Sasha. The guest stars were all pretty great for the most part, or at least the memorable ones. And I put Bradley was good, and Tosin was Tosin.
Yep.
I put some lazy and unlikable story decisions, mainly the death of Ashad and then Kashama sacrificing himself were the main 2 points that I didn't like there. Put visually stunning apart from the lens flares because Jesus Christ they're ridiculous. Music is atmospheric but unmemorable for the most part apart from the Cyberman motif, which I do like. I did make a note of saying though that, to be fair, having now watched them all at once, not a lot really happens if you, like, a lot happens in terms of we learn a lot, but in terms of the actual right there, right then, what do the characters do? Not much. Like, they escape the planet and go to the cyber carrier, and then that takes them to Gallifrey, and then they leave, and that's about it, really. All the Cyberman stuff just becomes null and void after the Master kills Ashad.
I want to agree.
and for the...
Sorry. I was going to say I want to
I was
agree
just going
with
to say,
you.
and then for a lot of the Timeless Children, because so much of that story revolves around this huge reveal, a lot of that episode for me just kind of ended up feeling like one big exposition dump. Which it's probably not what they were going for, but that's how it came across to me, just because so much of it is centered around, oh, we've got all this information, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, but
Yeah.
you're kind of just leaving everything you'd already built up in the wayside.
Yeah, I didn't make a note of it, but I also felt like you could have spread the Timeless Children thing over the season as a whole and avoided that kind of like, oh crap, it's the end, here's everything exposition done.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the flashes of kind of like the Doctor's getting flashes of Ireland, replace a few flashes of the kind of timeless child girl with that big spire with bits of that Ireland scene, and that whole thing becomes better because you're building up a mystery of what it was, and you know that it's the Doctor getting these flashes rather than just leading from the cyber wars into it.
Even if they'd have done some of it back in series 11.
Better than just one line, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We get one line about the Timeless Child in the Ghost Monument, and then it's never mentioned again until Spyfall, and I just feel like if they'd have put a little bit more build-up for all of this throughout series 11 and 12, and had, dripped as little bits of information, then it wouldn't have just felt like so much was just dropped on us all at once.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge mistake to have introduced the Ruth Doctor and then have her not appear again until this Matrix scene, because it's just you're expecting an explanation that was never going to come.
I think she was great. Jay Martin played a good part. I know you mentioned earlier that you didn't particularly like her, but
I love her in this episode. If I'm saying Timeless Children, I love her, but yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I really enjoyed her in Fugitive as well. I mean, I think part of the reason why I really hope she does appear again is just because I want to see more of her on screen. I think she's got a very electrifying presence. I remember in Fugitive, even before we knew, it's the Doctor, I couldn't take my eyes off of her on screen. I was
100%.
like, who is she? It was just, she was really
by that episode.
She was very, very fun to watch on screen, and I just hope they give us that again. But yeah. Pretty much touched on everything there, and overall, I gave Timeless Children as an episode on as the whole a 7. So again, I gave Ascension an 8, this a 7. So I'm pretty much in the same camp as Mike, where 7.5 or.
But would you round down or up? Because it's your choice, So
overall, I think I'd keep it at a 7. I think I'd keep it if I had to round it. I'd give it a 7. I think overall.
Okay. Whew. Well then, my thoughts. I don't go into as much detail as you guys, but I've got a couple of lines prepared. It's a competent return for the Cybermen, though they weren't utilised greatly. The cast all played a good part, and whilst I don't agree with some of the creative decisions, the story itself wasn't that bad. However, it was very disappointing in the sense that I didn't maintain the levels of excitement that I had at times, and especially in the second part, I became very bored at times. I don't like how it contradicts stuff and opens up plot holes, though Chibnall being ballsy enough to do this should be applauded. Sasha and Jodie were very good and had brilliant chemistry, as was the direction and the special effects. I can't fault. It was great. I can't rate it any higher than Fugitive of the June, so it's another 4 out of 10 for me.
Oh!
I've got the same kind of criticisms, bringing it up to a 5 out of 10 overall.
That's a lot lower than you praised that quite a bit, and then you just gave it a 4.
Yeah, I personally think that you were a little unfair with the rating, but it's your call to make.
Hey,
but I think
like I said in the first one, and like I said, 15 minutes of the first episode was great, in my opinion, and in all the scenes in the spaceship, I didn't like. Then in the second one, as Andrew said earlier, not much actually happens. So I have the same criticisms as I do for Fugitive, which I rated a 4 out of 10. So I can't rate it any higher because there's not as many good things going for it, in my opinion.
I disagree. I think the problem I have with Fugitive is that if you took out the reveal of the Ruth Doctor, the episode literally is nothing. But if you take out the Timeless Children stuff, I think not only does that improve these episodes, but it's a fantastic Cybermen and the Master 2-part finale that would rate probably a 9 or a 10 for me.
But the thing is, we have an 8 and we have a 7 and we have a 5. It's not like miles apart.
Oh yeah, it's not as bad as I thought you guys were going to be. You didn't savage it anywhere near as much as I thought you would. So
no,
I appreciate that.
Like I said, 5 is not bad. 5 is
not
mediocre. 5 is right in the middle.
I was expecting 1s or 2s from you guys, the way that I've seen a lot of criticism of this online, and you didn't.
So 5 isn't harsh. perfectly fine, especially in
I
this
will.
era.
I will be completely honest. I actually ended up enjoying rewatching it way more than I thought I would.
I think that's the case because you're not expecting the reveals, and so you can't be disappointed by them. So I agree.
Because
I think if you
I
watch it
didn't.
knowing, yeah.
I didn't even dislike it when it was first aired, but
Oh, I
just
loved it when it first aired.
I remember being like, I'm pretty sure when I went straight onto Twitter after it had aired, I'm pretty sure I gave it a 10 because I was just like blown away by everything that had just happened.
I think
And
I
then
did
like
too.
a week later, I was like, okay, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And then my opinion sort of soured over time. But now that I've rewatched it, I'm like, you know what? It's really not that bad. I get
Yeah.
why it's controversial, but compared to other stuff that Chibnall's done in his era, I think it's one of his best, to be fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I've got.
If you compared this
I've
to
got
everything he wrote for
one
Series 11, this is miles ahead.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, I've
So
got
what's the average
rating.
then, Will, between?
It's a 6.6.
I think that's low. I think that's low for the app. But okay.
6.6 out of 10, which is a 3.3 out of 5. If you put into that respect, 3.3 out of 5, I think that's fair.
I still think that's
pretty
low.
average. That's pretty average.
I think that's low for what the episode is. I think that's.
But
a
the
bit
thing
low.
is, Andrew gave
But okay.
it a 7, and the average comes out with 6.6. So it's like I said, it's not far from what we actually said.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't
Okay.
be a surprise, considering that is the average. And 6.6,
Yeah.
8. And you did say 7.5 averaged up. That's less, technically, that's less than 1 different to what your combined score is.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
6.6.
And,
Very,
as
very
far
fair.
as New Who finales go, this is better than I can think 3 off the top of my head that this is much better than. So
I can think of one it's much better than, and it was the previous year.
yeah, but I'd say Battle of Askarov Kolos, Last of the Time Lords, and probably Wedding and River Song are probably lower than this in terms of finales.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I prefer to the Big Bang, but I'm not sure I do. I think they may be on the same level.
Oh, I've
Just to
already
save you
I've already
guys
given my
10.
piece on Big Bang. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you hated the Big Bang.
I hate it, but I also like a lot of the scenes in it. I hate the overall storyline.
You said it was a
But-
4 out of 10, and then you said this one's 8 out of 10, but it's on the same level.
Yeah, I'm weird like that.
Guys, the
Yeah.
rating of this episode should be a 5. By that logic, Jesus.
Anyway,
No,
after that ridiculously wrong
I think
review.
6.6 is very fair, and that rates above an unearthly child, which was 5.3.
I was gonna say, so you kind of have to be really annoyed now because it rates above an unearthly child.
Yeah. But it's not much over an earthly child, and I guess you guys really like it. This
Yeah, I think
episode
there's lots
anyway.
to like.
There's lots
I
of
mean, I will-
episodes.
I was just going to agree. There is a lot to like. There are, like I said, there are issues that I personally wasn't as fond of, but overall, I don't think it's a bad episode at all. And I'm actually very glad that you recommended we review this one because it's probably not one I would have gone back and watched otherwise.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think we need to wrap this up. It's almost 3 o'clock. We've been here.
I knew this
I
was
know,
gonna
I'm
be 3
sorry.
hours, dude. I told you it would be 3 hours.
And in the last episode, we were it was with Mario, whatever his name is, and he said, because it's Mario, not his real name, but he mentioned how he reckons this episode was going to be the shortest, and I said, now he said that I reckon it's going to be the longest, and by far it's the longest.
Easily.
But I think.
Are you gonna edit anything out, or are we gonna keep the full 3 hours? Because no one's gonna listen to a 3-hour
I think
podcast.
You're planning
To be fair-
I think you're planning to do 2 things for tomorrow in your episode recording. I think
Yeah.
you should just stick to one. You should be talking about one for about an hour.
I don't think there's a lot to say, but I'll
See how it
stick with
goes.
what I've got planned. But
I don't
because
think it helped that the 2-parter that we chose to review is the most controversial, so there was so much to talk about.
yeah, I also don't think it's super wise to start reviewing 2 episodes as one thing because there's a lot.
Yeah.
I know we're doing that again as well next week, and now I'm starting to get a bit concerned about
Which
that.
one are
'cause
we doing next? No, don't mention
recording
it.
next
Please
week
don't
anyway.
say it. Yeah, don't say it.
I won't say it, but yeah, it's 2 episodes that make a 2-parter, and I'm kind of like, oh crumbs, are we gonna have to severely cut down our thoughts? I know that I'm gonna not be making as many notes even as I did. So,
Is it going to be Heaven Sent and Hell Bent?
No,
No.
we're not covering that. You'll just have to wait and see.
No, that would actually take up way too long because there's a lot in those. I don't think it's so much that there's a lot to say. It's just that it's 2 episodes that kind of throws me a bit.
Okay,
Fair
guys,
enough. Right,
let's,
news.
Let's finish this up. The news. Oh, there is no news. Well, there is a bit of news, but I think we should just wrap this up
There
now.
is no news.
There is no news at all.
Breaking
Well,
news,
I'll-
nothing has happened. Everyone is fine.
Yes.
I'll probably have time tomorrow for news, but yeah, don't worry about the fact I'm doing 2 episodes. As I said, one of them is literally 12 minutes long, dude, and there's not much to say. So
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for listening, and thank you, Andrew, for coming on. I hope you had a bit of fun.
I had a
And-
lot of fun. Thank you for just letting me talk for like 3 hours about my favourite show.
No worries. It was
Well, I
more
hope
like a
people listen,
Andrew
'cause I
and Mike
really like it.
podcast today. I barely spoke.
oh crap, sorry,
Sign of
dude.
times, because R.I.P. Will, you know. I'm
It's
going
really funny. Once we started reviewing specifically the Timeless Children, I think me and Mike just completely ran away with it, and Paul Will was just sat there like, all right.
I was just.
And I'm
the thing
so
is,
sorry,
I
dude.
want to give you guys room to talk, especially you being the guest. So I just thought, go for it, and you were very
That's a
passionate.
bad idea. I can talk for hours.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you
same.
were passionate about this. I was not passionate about this episode. I was just passionate about the first part because I had a lot to say about the first part. The second part, like I said, there's not much to speak about other than the actual Timeless Children stuff. So that's why I just shut up and let you speak.
Well,
But yeah,
let's
thank
still.
you. Thank you so much for letting me come on.
Yeah, I don't think my rating would be as much of a shock to you if you actually heard what I had in my notes. Because I do have
Sorry.
negatives, I got positives that I just didn't mention, but it is what it is. But yeah,
Um,
I
thank
will
you.
be completely honest. I thought you'd go lower than a 4. So to be fair,
So did
Yeah.
I. So did
Listen,
I.
I'll propose something to you now, and you can. It's your baby. You decide. This is a 3-hour podcast, and you haven't said your notes. Why don't we split this into 2 episodes, and air maybe on a Saturday and a Sunday that week, and then you can spend an hour maybe just giving your notes.
No, there's no way. No
Not
way.
now. I mean, like I'm happy to have you bounce off me if you want to do it another time and then edit it in. But
Yeah.
it's
Well,
up
this
to
is
you.
going up next Sunday, so there's not much wiggle room.
good luck
Oh.
editing it all.
Yeah, I do apologise. I mean, this is only the 3rd we're recording. We're still learning, but I did step over you. You're entirely there, Will. So it won't happen again. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's not a problem. And I think we should clear it up now because we didn't mention in episode 3. Mike will be doing the podcast solo for 1 episode in episode 4, which is with @RealDoc. I'm not sure who they are. Well, I know who they are, obviously, but I've never spoke to them voice to voice. Likewise with Andrew. This is the first time we've actually spoken. And
No, but I feel like I
Never
could
spoken
talk.
in voice.
I feel like I could talk to Andrew for literally the rest of the day and not get bored. So
No.
Oh,
hopefully people
get
will
me wrong,
agree.
I'm not gonna lie. As soon as this was done, I was literally about to message you, being like, "Okay, tell me more of your opinions."
Yeah.
But no, it's been nice to actually talk to you properly, Will, rather than just messaging, because we've been chatting for a very long time, I think.
It must have been about 2 years now, 2018.
Something like that, yeah. So this is the
Yeah.
first time we've actually spoken, like, vocally.
And it's great fun on the podcasts. It's a
Thank
shame
you
the
for having
website
me.
didn't work. No worries.
Thank you for letting me just ramble on about my favourite show for 3 hours, and yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks for being an entertaining guest. Because I hope people listen. Because I really think a lot of what you have to say should be heard, and I think you were entertaining for the whole 3 hours.
I don't think we've had a bad guest. All 3 guests so far have been great.
I think I'm a
you.
bit crap on all of the episodes, but I'm not a guest, so.
Absolutely not. You're a great host.
Can I just say, before we go, I wanted to mention this at the start. I know you're probably not, but it's kind of funny that you have the same name and the same accent. If either of you have ever watched the What Culture YouTube channel, you sound exactly like Mike from What Culture.
Yeah, I sound like a lot of people because I also sound a lot like there's another guy who does like history of the Doctor and the Master and stuff, who's got a very similar accent to me. I can't remember his name right now, but yeah.
Now that you've peddled What Culture, I think we should mention that Dimensions of Who, also named as Kuro, who owns the Universe of Who website, is now a writer for What Culture, and he's doing Doctor Who articles there. So if you guys are still listening to this, be sure to go check out his Twitter account and give him some love.
That's
Because
really
he's
cool,
a good
because
article.
I watch Who Culture, that's the new YouTube channel for just Doctor Who, so that's cool.
Yeah. And I think
Anyway,
also,
right.
I think I should
yeah,
also
just-
mention before we wrap it up, I've got a new series of articles on the website I just mentioned, Universe of Who, and it's basically the evolution of the soundtrack. And my first article came out today actually, and it's talking about the origins of the theme tune. It's very interesting, in my opinion. Go read it. Yeah.
I've quickly found that guy who sounds a bit like me, who I want to recommend as well. I don't know him and he doesn't know I'm doing this, but it's a guy called Ace Creeper. That's the name of his YouTube channel, and he
He's
has
on the
fantastic. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. He does fantastic videos on the complete history of the Doctor, the Master, and various other things that I thoroughly recommend checking out.
Yeah. He's on the Chase YouTuber special, which would be great fun.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for watching. I've already given my thanks to Andrew, but I'll thank him again. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And if we do continue this into next year, I'd love you on as a third host.
Oh, thank you.
No worries. That's your official offer on the podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
Absolutely.
I don't think Mike would mind that, would you?
No, not at all. And we could alternate hosting duties and make it 2 at a time, and any combination of the two of us would be great, I think, as well. So
Brilliant.
To be fair, I think if it was just me and Will, it would literally just be like us chatting about how much we love the Moffat era.
Yeah, we would just be like, oh, this is great, this is great, this is great.
And then Mike,
Well-
you're just going to sit there
Mike just comes on
listening,
and says,
going,
no,
"Oh."
it's not.
I love Stephen Moffat, and if you want any further proof of that, tune into episode 4 for a Moffat episode that might surprise you. Let's just say that.
Oh, I'm intrigued now. Right,
Oh,
thank you for
should be
having me.
intrigued
Thank
because
you.
it's not a conventional episode, actually. They're just,
Nope.
And hopefully
It's
that
still
gives
written
you
by
a
Stephen Moffat, though.
Is it the Curse of Fatal Death?
We can confirm or deny this.
reveal.
Wink, wink.
All I will say is I will explain later.
Yep.
Okay.
Just
Guys.
when it comes to listening to it back, just enjoy the sofa of reasonable comfort. Yeah.
Yes, I definitely will do. Definitely will do.
Well, guys, thank you for
I'll have to
listening
find my
this.
etheric beam locators first.
Let's
Sorry,
wrap
Will.
this up, let's
Go
wrap
ahead.
this up. Thanks, guys, for listening to this podcast. If you made it to the end, we all appreciate you so much. And listening to 3 hours of YouTube just rambling on about Timeless Children, I rate it. So thank you guys for listening. I hope to see you in episode 3, which comes out next Sunday.
Go and relieve
With
your
these-
bladders, you'll need it now.
With
Yeah.
these 2 hyenas. I'll see you next week. Peace out.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye!